is the meeting of the Brookline Select Board for January 14, 2020. Let's get going. First of all, any comments or updates from the board members? Ms. Hamilton.
Yes, so the U.S. Census Bureau is looking to recruit people to work to physically take the census. They're paid part-time jobs. For more information, visit www.2020census.gov/jobs.
Mr. Fernandez.
Sure. I was joined earlier today by our town administrator, Mel Kleckner, and also by Deborah Brown, town meeting member at the State House, where we all testified in favor of what town meeting passed this November, which was the real estate transfer fee legislation. And what we're hoping to do is to be able to get that passed through legislation, which will allow us to then put it in the future on the ballot to the voters. And what this legislation would allow us to do is to impose, as we've written it, a 2% fee on real estate transactions. The amount above $500,000 would be taxed, and that money going to, for us, our affordable housing trust fund, to be used to create new affordable housing and also take care of our existing stock so we can have high quality affordable housing, continue to have high quality affordable housing in Brookline. So it was a great opportunity to be there. It was my first time testifying at the State House. It's an interesting experience. And just so you know, you don't necessarily need to be an elected official to do that. If there's an issue that you care about, there are public hearings where folks can go and testify. It was a great experience, and I encourage others to maybe do so about an issue that matters to you.
Great. So I have one update or announcement. Last night we had a very nice forum on the topic of racism and public health. About 80 people attended. This is a part one of a three-part series of forums addressing public health issues. Last night was, like I said, on racism and public health. In April, there'll be a forum on disparities in public health. And then in May, a final forum, racism and mental health. Caitlin Starr, who helped organize this, took extensive notes and will be compiling those notes for consideration by the Diversity Commission, the Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, and the Health Department. So we'll hear from that in terms of the outcome of this meeting, and it will be used to inform the subsequent forums. So, anything else? Okay, public comment. Mr. Oney.
Hi, Larry Oney, and I live on Marshall Street in Brookline. I wanted to have the opportunity to begin a conversation or talk about the following issue. My experience is that there are many citizens in town are not aware, and this is kind of a fact check, that each one of you are police commissioners. Is that correct?
Yes.
We haven't surveyed the
No,
town.
I'm sorry, that you, not what the citizens believe, but that each one of you is a police commissioner, correct?
That's correct, but let's figure out what that means.
Exactly, and that's
Okay.
exactly why, that's exactly why I think I'm here, because there are a number of us who are interested in how you all see your role as a police commissioner. What do you see as your responsibilities as a police commissioner? And who is your constituency as a police commissioner? I just want to say why this especially interests me, but some other people. I'm a product of Brookline Citizen Police Academy, which I found that experience very interesting and very helpful. I have taught in public administration programs police officers who are working on degrees. And I am highly sensitive to the fact that police officers many of them are kind of street-level bureaucrats who are making decisions every day and have real challenging work. So, the issue is that my experience is that if the police commissioners in town saw themselves as in the prevention business, and it's the meaning, Chairman Green, about what it means to be a police commissioner is very important, and I'm with you on that, because my past experience is talking to some previous police commissioners in town. They say, well, I'm really not a police commissioner. You know, I don't have a badge anymore. I'm really not a police commissioner. And I think that if there was clarification and people were really informed about how each of you see your role as a police commissioner, it would prevent certain situations that then have unintended consequences for citizens, police officers, and it would enhance the civic health of the community. So the question is, how can we, how can we have that conversation about how you all see your role in the meaning of what it means to be a police commissioner?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
By the way, I have to apologize for not mentioning a very important event coming up next Monday, the Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration Committee's event held each year at the Coolidge Corner Theater. This year's going to be very interesting. We're going to have a presentation by Ruth Ellen Fitch, a longtime Brookline resident, former director of Metco program here in Brookline, former partner and head of the public finance department at a major law firm downtown, and the director of the Dimick Center. After her presentation, I will be interviewing her on issues related to housing, her move from Roxbury into Brookline in 1971, and the way in which that occurred through an organization called the Foundation for Brookline Housing, primarily. So it should be a very interesting event. We're also, of course, going to have our poetry reading and singing performances by high school students, Testosterone, and the Glee Club. And of course, Reggie Gibson will be performing. Everyone loves Reggie because he's such a dynamic performer, as well as the town's poet laureate, Zvi Slesling, will be reading a couple readings. So that's this Monday, beginning at 3 o'clock. It's free, but you need to go on to the website for the town's MLK Celebration Committee page to reserve tickets for the performance. So, okay. Anything else? Anyone else forget something? I'm embarrassed that I forgot that. So, it happens. So, question of approving Select Board minutes, November 5, 2019, November 12, 2019, November 19, 2019, November 26, 2019. Any objections to approving them? Any edits? That people have already given. Okay, all in favor? Does anyone want to separate any of them out for meetings that you missed? I don't recall that anyone did miss a meeting. Okay, so let's do them all together. I move approval of the November 5, 12, 19, and 26 minutes. Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay, Ms. Galantine, you're here for the question of accepting a tree mitigation payment in the amount of $42,750 from Boston Children's Hospital in compliance with the special permit governing the Brookline Place redevelopment project.
So,
Yeah.
good evening, Erin Galantine, Director of Parks and Open Space in Brookline.
So as you said, I do have this request for acceptance. It's a mitigation payment associated with the Brookline Place project, Children's Hospital. And what we did is when they went through their special permit process at the beginning, we did an assessment on site with them and assessed per caliper inch the trees on site, and then with the development, what trees would be removed. And this was both on site and in the public way associated with this development. They then moved forward with their plan for the site, including on-site plantings. They got credit for that against the removals. And this payment is for those removals that they were not able to achieve in terms of replacement plantings on site or within the associated public way. So we will then have that payment, and we will use that for the improvement of the town's urban forest.
Okay. This is just one of many benefits that we received from this project going back to, what, 2013? Or was it even before that?
It,
Yeah, well,
Many years.
Many years.
I don't recollect.
The public benefits included a fairly extensive transportation demand management plan, a landscaping contributions, taking down that beautiful bridge over Washington Street.
That's right. And some
people
public
call it
space,
beautiful.
some space that they're sharing with the public.
And also a fairly interesting plan for hiring of Brookline residents, particularly from the Brookline Housing Authority properties. So, we got a lot out of this in addition to the tree mitigation. However, I think we need to, this is not your area, all right, but, there were some opportunities to receive some public benefits following the community needs assessment that was done, which unfortunately looked at community needs in Boston, Lexington, Weymouth, and a few other towns, but not right here in Brookline. So that's something that we'll have to raise with them or bring up in some context before their next 3-year assessment is prepared. So.
Absolutely. With any of these major projects, we work very closely with planning to look at what the on-site impacts are and really what off-site impacts will be, and we try to mitigate that early on.
Yeah, good. Any questions, comments?
Oh, it's terrific.
Great.
We're gonna get the money.
Okay. So I move approval of the acceptance of a tree mitigation payment in the amount of $42,750 from Boston Children's Hospital. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Next, still Ms. Gallantuno.
Yes.
Okay. Question of accepting a fiscal year 2021 Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Action Grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the amount of $112,500 to be used towards the development of an urban forest climate resiliency master plan. And we're going to be voting to authorize the town administrator to sign and enter into associated contracts and agreements for these projects on behalf of the town. Yes.
So I am really excited to bring you the news that the town of Brookline was selected for this very competitive grant. The work that we're about to embark on is really cutting edge. It was one of the top priorities that came out of the Selectmen's Climate Summit last spring. And it was an initiative that we knew was really important, but was not otherwise funded. And so we started to look around at what some funding opportunities might be so that we could start on this important work. So the board approved our submitting the grant to the Commonwealth in October. We just found out last week that we were selected. And we got full funding for our grant request of $112,000 and change, and 25% will be paid for from tree funds that we have in hand, such as mitigation funds, and staff time.
Great. Any questions, comments?
No, I want to comment. I think it's fantastic. And it's nice to see the fruit of one's labors, we had, way back in, I think, 2017, we had the Climate Action Committee and working with Maria Morelli had developed a vulnerability plan, which lots of departments participated in the development of, and I think, they had some sort of kernel of growth here.
Absolutely.
And it's thrilling to see this, really is. And I'm sure we're going to be able to do a lot with the money we've been allocated, and I look forward to it.
Yeah, thank you, me too.
Yeah, I'd like to add that, this is one of those, I guess to some people, not very interesting, not very sexy, climate.
It is both
change.
of those things. Right.
Well, I mean, okay, whatever.
Higher than the whole.
Okay. I don't know. At any rate.
Urban forest, I mean, it's a contradiction in terms. That is so cool.
But what's important about an urban forest and the trees, the grass, the weeds, the flowers, the soil, is that we talk about climate change, but the way to mitigate to some degree climate change is through the way that those organisms capture carbon and either keep them in the trees, keep them in the soil, and otherwise keep them out of the air. And it's very important, and these days it's something that we're particularly aware of in light of the horrible fires going on in Australia, the devastation of the Amazon basin through fires and clear cutting, and the fires in California, which are relative to the Amazon and Australia are relatively small, but still a huge destruction of those carbon capture facilities, as well as just releasing a lot of the captured carbon into the atmosphere. And it's really horrible, and I'm glad that in this very, very little way, I mean, it's not going to solve the climate crisis, but we are doing something that is very positive. And I hope people appreciate that aspect of this program. So. Any other questions, comments?
If I may, I just want to point out one line in the memo which I thought was really terrific. You say the plan will also be utilized as a tool to identify how Brookline can best serve the community, particularly environmental justice neighborhoods and vulnerable populations most susceptible to climate change impacts, such as the urban heat island effect. And I think it's just a great example of what smart, thoughtful, inclusive, progressive governance looks like, and to include that as a focus of this larger project. I think I just want to give you kudos to you and the team that put this together. Thanks.
Great. No other questions? I'll call for a vote. I move approval of accepting fiscal year 2021 Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program Action Grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the amount of $112,500. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Masek. Question of approving a contract amendment number 1 in the amount of $59,550 for Russo Bar for the building envelope design services at the Public Safety, Main Library, Sewell Recreation, Baker School windows in connection with the building envelope and roof replacement program. Yes.
Ray Masak, Building Department. We have a continuing plan to support our infrastructure, and for this amendment, it's for the building envelope.
So Russo is the design consultant or design?
They are the design consultant. We set it up for a 3-year contract.
Okay. So at some point, Russo is going to put out bids for the contractors to actually do the work.
Correct.
That he has designed. So I want to emphasize again, like I many times do, and I hope there's follow-through, that we have to ensure that minority and women business contractors are actively solicited to participate in the bidding. I know it's not easy. We post it in the newspaper, post these bids in newspapers and the state central registry, and we really should expect contractors to read those places, but sometimes maybe they don't, And if we can figure out ways to, get the word out to those contractors who may have missed it in the registry, either because they didn't read it or at first reading, it didn't seem like something they wanted to do. I think we need to figure out ways to doing that. So, any other questions, comments? No? I move approval of approving contract amendment number 1 in the amount of $59,550 for Russo Bar, for the building envelope designer services and the previously mentioned public buildings. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you. You're up next, too? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Question of replenishing the real estate force account related to legal work associated with the MBTA easement and other related documents in the amount of $25,000 in connection with the Brookline High School expansion project at 111 Cypress Street.
As part of the agreement, Mr. Chair, for the MBTA agreement, the legal aspects are complete, but the documents require minimum funding of $25,000. As the project moves forward and it gets completed, this funding gets returned back to the town.
Okay.
It's just a clerical,
And the money's already been appropriated to the project.
Correct.
Right? So it goes into the fund, and once it's used, it comes back out of the project.
any funds that are not used by the T for the legal aspects. There may be a legal issue that may come up in the future. I can't predict that, but that's where this funding is used for.
So we'll get back whatever's left as opposed to the.
Correct, and we get to review the accounting as well. They send us the bills and show us what's been spent on their side of the ledger.
Great. Any questions? Okay, I move approval of the replenishing of the real estate force account related to the MBTA easement. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay. Again, Mr. Masak, question of replenishing the capital delivery force account related to MBTA construction diversions associated with the MBTA station and the new 111 Cypress building in the amount of $1,119,463.40. Yes, Ms. Masak.
Yes, as part of the MBTA work, there's something, so when we can't piggyback, what I call piggybacking with the MBTA, they're doing work on the Green Line on the weekends. When they cannot piggyback, we need to pay for the diversion, bus diversions, so that the project can move forward. We need this weekend work, which allows us to get closer to the T-tracks where we can't do that during the weekdays. So this is allowing us to continue to make the project move forward in a positive manner.
Okay. So is the 1 million plus for a certain period of time, or is it for the entire project?
We're coming back with another request for diversions for the whole year of 2020. This is for just 5 diversions. Last week, we were able to, what I call piggyback, and the town didn't pick that up. This weekend, I need to have a check in place so that we can pay for that diversion.
So when you say piggyback, you mean when they were going to divert anyway?
They were going to divert anyway, so we meet on a regular basis with the MBTA to understand how we can work together. So if they're doing work, we will schedule for that weekend, whenever we can. For instance, and the reason I didn't want to bring this to you folks, but we thought we had December we were going to piggyback all through December. But the right-of-way committee for the T canceled that work in December, and so wherever we can piggyback, we'll piggyback.
Okay. So any other questions?
Just a clarification. My understanding is that the MBTA is handling the logistics of this. We're
Yes.
just footing the bill.
We are just footing the bill.
I just don't want you to have to be contracting bus service and figuring out how to fill people, positions when people call out sick, so.
I can do
Well,
that.
well, if you did it, you probably wouldn't be using those luxury buses that the MBTA uses and save us some money. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. All in favor of replenishing the capital delivery force account for the MBTA construction diversions? Say aye. Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Okay. Question of approving amendment number 12, Brookline High School expansion project with Skanska USA in the amount of $22,949,790 for pre-GMP guaranteed maximum price 12 early bird package MBTA platform.
Early bid packages, but.
Early, typo here. Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to go over, this is a procurement-based process that we're going through now. For the 111 Cypress Building, we're procuring 49 packages, of which 25, through this amendment, 25 packages have been procured. For the STEM project, there'll be 60 packages. Through this amendment, 43 packages have been procured. The town is deeply engaged with Skanska. We have a process where we do interviews and debriefing sessions, especially for the bigger packages, and those packages are called requests to approve. So this is a procurement-based process that we're systematically procuring pieces of the project. And by next month, the rest of the procurement should be complete. We've been assured by Skanska that they're working hard to finish up the procurement.
So my earlier comment applies here too. And, here in particular, MBTA has a fairly specific requirement for a plan to include minority and women businesses in the contracting. So I assume we have such a plan, which I'd like to see, and I assume that...
There isn't quite a plan. It says best efforts for the minority business and women business enterprise.
So it says best efforts in what context or in what...
Women disadvantaged business enterprise.
Where is that written?
That is...
In our contract documents?
I have it. And it's in our contract documents as well, Mr. Chairman. It's a non-discrimination clause, item 10, which we have in all our contracts, a non-discrimination clause with Skanska. And then it says, the licensee shall use reasonable efforts to contact, encourage, and utilize minority female business enterprise, which is what we're doing for the entire contract. And for the platform, which we've procured in its entirety, we're about at 8% for minority and women business enterprise.
Do you report anywhere that that is the case, or is that just your knowledge?
Yes. I just wanted to show people. We have sorry. This is our progress report for Skanska, and the last few pages deal with minority business enterprise. We have a spreadsheet that we're following for the entire project.
Could you share that with me and other members of the board?
Sure.
Okay, I mean electronically, hopefully.
It's been, yes, I'll pull it out. It's been frustrating that we're not seeing the participation that we envisioned for the entire project.
Okay.
Part of the problem in all of this, we're discovering is the market is so robust and so hot that there are sometimes not even two bidders on a particular part of the project. Sometimes, and then one drops out, and we only have one. And this has happened recently, in fact, on drywall, I think.
That was a good point. Skanska will send out bid packages to 9 or 10, including what I call minority business enterprise and women enterprise. And for drywall, for Cypress, we had up until a few weeks ago 2 bidders, and then one of the bidders dropped out. This is what we're seeing in a hot market. It's very, very discouraging as a project. And we'll be coming before you with some other budgetary news due to what we're seeing regarding the market conditions. So we're putting that, what I call, not a story, but we're putting together what we've seen from a budgetary standpoint, and it's not a good story.
So it's important for us to hear that story, important for the community to hear that story.
Correct.
Because hiring of minority and women businesses is not a magical trick. It really is very difficult work, and sometimes it's almost impossible, not for no reason other than that the market is very robust and people have other alternatives. And of course, contracting in Brookline can be difficult for a variety of reasons, as we all know.
Well, that's a really good point, because in Brookline, the parking situation, for one thing, is incredibly tough. So would they rather come to Brookline, or would they rather go to a more outlying community where they, have a big parking lot, just stick everybody in it? So it is, and that makes it much more difficult for us to attract companies because of this issue, so.
I speculated, but I was told the drywaller said part of his bid was that concern on access to the site.
Yeah.
So that's important information to fill in the story, but still we need to, present that story so that people are clear on what the problems are, as well as, giving us some ideas as to how to work around those problems, using the old building construction term. So, okay. Any other questions?
Just briefly, I'll just say I'm very interested in the data you'll share with us as well. Thanks for your attention to it. And just I've seen you here a lot. You're just, I think, Ray, one of those sort of unsung heroes of government that keeps projects moving even when they're outside of the public eye. So just thanks for all the work that you do in keeping this going.
Okay.
I just want to return to the budget point for a second. I'm looking at this material, and it looks like these bids came in nearly $5 million over what we were expecting. So I think quantifying the size of the unanticipated expense is important, not just saying we're over budget. $5 million in the scope of even a project this large is a significant sum.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor?
Ray had a comment.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
We will never say we need to understand what the number is.
Yep.
And I won't say any more than that, but it's even overwhelming me.
I mean, for those that can't see this is materials. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's doors and drywall and
Right.
waterproofing and tiles and
Carpet.
and paint. So it's I mean,
It's all
this.
the
The bread and butter of the project.
Yeah.
So, and it's on our website, so if people want to go through it, they can. I assume it's on the website, yeah. Okay, so I move approval of amendment number 12, Brookline High School Expansion Project with Skanska USA in the amount of $22,949,790 for a pre-GMP 12 early bid package MBTA platform. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Ms. Fernandez?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Are you still up? No. Question of approving a temporary wine and malt beverages sales license to Puppet Showplace Theater to be held on Saturday, January 18, 2020, for Puppet Slam from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. at 32 Station Street. Any questions?
I want to know
They're
what
okay
Puppet
with the
Slam
police.
is.
Paperwork appears to be in order, and the police department sees no reason to deny the application.
That's not the answer to the question.
Well, the answer is attend and find out.
That's right.
Okay, all in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Authorization to hire human resources. I'm sorry, okay, I'm using my old agenda, which I make notes on, so.
Second one at 3.1. 3I.
Yeah.
Lars Akers.
Okay, question of approving temporary all kinds beverages non-sales license to the Lars Anderson Auto Museum to be held on Thursday, January 16, 2020, for a client appreciation reception from 5:30 PM to 9:30 PM at 15 Newton Street. Any questions, any problems there?
Again, the paperwork seems to be in order, and the police department sees no reason to deny the application.
All right, okay. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Now, Ms. Braga, authorization to fill the position of Human Resources Staff Assistant, C-06, I guess is the classification, in the Human Resources Department.
Yes, Ann Braga, HR Director for the town of Brookline. The request before you is to refill our HR assistant position. We thankfully were able to fill our benefits administrator position by promoting our HR assistant. Kayla Tolino has been with us for about 18 months and has stepped into the benefits administrator position, and right now is doing two jobs. I would like not to do two jobs. So we're looking to fill her position and move forward, and then we will be left with one vacant position left to fill, which is our disability and leave benefits position, which we will be re-advertising.
Okay, so you gave us some materials on candidate data and
Yes.
diversity. Do you want to talk about
So-
that now, or do you want us to vote on this?
You can
Well,
vote on
why don't
that.
we vote on this first?
Vote on this first, and then
Yeah.
I'll go through the
Okay.
candidate data.
Any questions about this position, or? Okay. I move approval of I move to authorize the filling of the position of Human Resources Staff Assistant, C-06, in the Human Resources Department. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay, Ms. Braga, give us
So-
some background
Sure.
before you walk us through the,
So as you know, I've been here about 7 months and have been going through the various systems and processes in place by my predecessor and by the town, and one of which is our applicant tracking system and our advertising. And up until recently, we were using Pro Diversity Network as our specific diversity-focused advertising for all of our positions. I was informed that we were still using it up until August of last year, but Pro Diversity Network never reached out to us to submit a new invoice to renew our process. I also looked on the website, and it was not as robust and did not include any municipalities or state entities. So they were only advertising in private sector entities. So as I looked at the information that they were, the source information in our applicant tracking system, they had only sourced for us 5 applicants in the last 18 months, of which 3 of those were white and 2 were non-white. And we were paying approximately $5,000 a year. So thought that that was probably not the best use of our money moving forward. And I'd been working with the Employee Diversity Subcommittee of CDICR, who I go to their monthly meetings. I was set to meet with them to go over applicant data in December. Due to an issue with the chair, we were not able to meet in December. So I was not able to present to them the issue with Pro Diversity Network or the data that I have before you. I did present this information to them earlier last week, so I'm presenting it to you. So I have 2 pie charts, 2 pages of pie charts. One is the 2019 data, and one is 2018, so they mirror. But I'm going to walk you through what it looks like quickly.
before you go there, last week, Mr. Fernandez raised the question of ZipRecruiter. And I went on that site and confirmed that all of the postings that we've been authorizing and that have been said to be posted on ZipRecruiter were not there.
So that
So
was, I
it's-
believe, Pro Diversity Net, not ZipRecruiter.
Okay,
So we'll deal with, we've got a new site for diversity recruiting that we're going to talk about after I go through sort of what our analytics look like for now quickly. We do have a voluntary candidate disclosure form that allows for gender, race, disability, and veteran status. So gender, what we have here is female, male, and not specified. It does not allow for a gender non-conforming. So I will be working with Clearco to allow for that third option and not for a decide not to answer. But you will see that 37% chose not to answer out of 100 just on gender. The next pie chart is our race identification, and you will see, starting at 12 o'clock, it starts with the Asian population and then goes around, and you'll see that at 6% you have declined to identify, and 35% is unspecified. So in two opportunities, there are ways where people can choose not to answer the question. So 41% of the people are not identifying themselves by any sort of race at all. So that provides a challenge in looking at our analytics of applicant pool as well. And the bottom pie chart just shows the type of jobs that we're advertising. And I will qualify these pie charts, they are only for full-time positions. Does not include camp positions, part-time positions, seasonal positions, because otherwise we would have vastly different numbers. And the comparison for 2018 is on the next page. But what I want to point out to you is that from 2018 to 2019, we had an 85% increase in the number of applicants applying for our full-time jobs. So we went from 1,300 applicants to 2,400, almost 2,500 applicants in 1 year. So the word is getting out there for Brookline jobs.
Do you know how many postings there were in 2018 versus 19?
I did not have that head-to-head number. I do know that there were more postings in 2019, but it wasn't a significantly different number.
Not to explain 85% increase.
Not to explain 85%. I will give you as a example, we did get permission to advance advertise the HR staff assistant, so it did go up on Friday last week. In 5 days, we have 67 applicants for the HR assistant position. So I don't want to be looking at 200 applicants, to be honest. Now, that doesn't mean we have 65 or 67 qualified applicants, but we do have 67 applicants.
Can I ask a quick question on the that bottom pie chart that you're referring to?
Sure.
In the 2019 data, it seems to be like there's an extra category there called not set.
So one of the challenges is we had a different person putting the jobs in, and they weren't putting the EEO category. So we actually have to go back in looking at these analytics and do some changes on that and make sure that all of the postings had an EEO category. So we have to go back and backfill that. So in looking at the data, once you look at it, you say, there's some holes in the data. So we'll go back and make changes to that. So we're able to look at apples to apples on that more successfully.
so this category of declined to identify or unspecified,
Yep.
is fairly significant.
Yes.
But we can sort of test the numbers by who we hire, right? I assume the hiring is going to be somewhat distributed over, various racial groups.
They should be, but some of those folks who didn't identify will have had to identify for EEO data
Yes,
in the actual hiring. Either they identified themselves or we had to identify them, which is required under law.
So what do those numbers tell us?
I haven't-
That's a group that, is identifying themselves one way or another. So-
Right, so I have some of that data done, I don't have it completed. That's why you don't have it in the package for you today, because the parsing out in Munis doesn't match the applicant tracking system, so I have to make sure that it crosswalks accurately.
Okay, so you'll get that to us at
I
some
will.
point? Okay.
So the next set of slides is from the proposal that we are, from the vendor that we are going with called diversityjobs.com. And as I had to explain to Mel, what happens with a vendor that we choose to go with is that they scrape data from our website and put it on theirs. So every night, diversityjobs.com will grab information from our website, all new jobs or updated status, and they will put it on their website. Diversityjobs.com started in 1997 as latjobs.com, which was the first Latino jobs website. Latpro.com, but now has diversified out. If you go to the fourth page of the Diversity Jobs slide deck, you'll see that they have veterans jobs, disability jobs, women, African Americans, Hispanic, Asian hires, and LGBT as their specific platforms. And we're able to work with them to customize information as needed, and we will get monthly analytics. So in the effort to move forward with data-driven decision-making, if we're looking at our recruiting information and we're not seeing drive-through hires from diversityjobs.com, we can reach out to our account rep and say, how do we drive traffic in a more interactive way, because we'll have a specific person that we're working with, whereas we never had that with Pro Diversity Network. You also have there, on the next few pages, demographics of their job-seeking pool, both on race as well as gender, educational profiles, and LGBT, veterans, and disabled. So this is to give you a bit of a profile of what we're going to do moving forward. I also wanted to let you know that in whatever way is best suited for you, I will happily provide regular reporting to you, whether it's quarterly to the select board. As I said, I do meet with the Employment Diversity Subcommittee monthly, in whatever way I can assist you in getting information in a way that meets your needs.
What do people think? I mean,
I'd like to ask
we
a
could
question.
rely, I'm sorry, well, let me just mention, we could sort of task the Diversity Commission to sort of analyze the information and get it to us. I'm not sure that's an efficient way of doing it, but that's one way. Or, quarterly reports, which,
I mean, it's obviously useful to see the information. You would especially like to know if we're doing well or if we're doing poorly.
Sure.
And then, we need to figure out if we're doing well, can we do even better? And if we're doing poorly, can we do better?
Sure.
So that would be, I don't know that we need to see every single report. I mean, you obviously are getting on top of this situation, and that's really good. I'm really happy with that. And I'd like to ask a question. You said that before that Pro Diversity, we paid them $5,000. And what is this particular platform costing us?
This platform is a $6,800 service. It's not a 3-year requirement, but we're going to sort of see what we get for a year and evaluate it after that.
Well, certainly the information looks good. I mean,
Yeah.
the reporting seems better.
So I think that we should get a report quarterly. I defer to others about what form that should take, but I think this is something that, at least in the early few quarters, we should be on top of and have a sense of how this is playing out and whether adjustment is necessary.
Okay.
I've got two questions. One, I may have missed this in your presentation, but when are our jobs going to start being listed on diversity jobs? Is this an
Once we
immediate-
sign the contract?
Okay. And then there's some circumstantial indication that this may be not a locally based company.
It is not.
So can you just give me a sense of what the penetration in the Boston market is? Are we joining our colleagues in municipalities in
So-
using this platform, or?
There aren't, so when I asked for municipalities, what I have is I have three Virginia municipalities, Arizona, Idaho, and Washington State, as well as private sector, nonprofits, colleges, and universities. So it's a broad scrape across there, but nothing specific to Massachusetts. But they pull about 300,000 job seekers from the diversity community. As you can see from the front page of the pie charts that you got, we currently advertise on the 4 largest boards, on the largest platforms generally. And then if we're adding a diversity-specific network, then we'll work with our contact on how we reach out and get into sort of the Boston-specific and
Yeah, I think it's great. I
Mass-specific.
just want to make sure that the eyeballs, the local eyeballs that we're
Yep.
looking to attract are going to this site. I confess, this is not my area of expertise, so I defer to others, so.
What about, what is the situation? Is it, this is not a public hearing or anything?
I understand, but I also understand that it's a lot of business trying to increase our diversity.
Okay, fine.
I would like to make a point.
ZipRecruiter, what's the situation there?
what do you mean with ZipRecruiter?
I mean, are we still using them?
So ZipRecruiter is a general web-based job service that scrapes our site, as well as Glassdoor, Indeed, Facebook, and the other job sites.
So we don't have a problem with them? I guess I was
No.
confused. Okay.
No. They're common through our contract with Clearco, that the sites that are listed across the middle of the first page pull our jobs. So I think there might have been a bit of confusion between ZipRecruiter and ProDiversityNet in your initial comments.
No, I did this a few days ago, and I forgot what I was doing.
Not a problem. A lot of things happen between now and then.
Yeah, yeah. Any other, you have a question?
Sure. I agree with Ben. I think the quarterly reporting would be great. It keeps our heads in the game and keeps us focused on these issues. I also think it might be helpful in the future to have, once we've got some of the answers and we've got the data sort of cleaned up, and we've done our pivot. Like, right now we're talking about whether or not we want to sort of sign up with these folks or dropping the other folks. And so after that pivot, to maybe even do a kind of public hearing where we get to hear from folks about, what they'd like to see, maybe some ideas are generated. I'm also, again, just like Ben said, I don't know enough about the world of DPW or some of our other departments to know if there are specific organizations or places that we should be engaging and connecting with in a more meaningful way. But I would expect and hope that maybe you're having those conversations with the various department heads about that. Is that right?
So for DPW, as an example, I'm using my contacts in Boston through Office of Workforce Development and some of the Roxbury neighborhood and Dorchester neighborhood folks that are looking to place community members who have CDL licenses and things like that, because those folks are specifically being trained by the city through different programs to get their CDL and hoisting, and then are looking for work. If they're not being hired by the city of Boston, the goal is to get them hired by someone. And so not everybody wants to stay living in the city of Boston, and they're required to under Boston residency. But if they have, my conversation with Andy, even though he's retired, is that he will take a new CDL and hoisting person and train them. And so these folks have no experience under their belt, but if they have a hoisting license and a commitment to work and a CDL driver's license, he'll put them to work in his public works department and get them trained up and experienced. And what these folks are looking for is, okay, I have no actual work experience driving the vehicles, I need a job. And so to be able to pull those connections back from Boston from a variety of ways, given that they're literally across the river in some ways, or on the other side of Jamaica Pond. And those folks are predominantly are not looking online for jobs, whether on diversityjobs.com or on a variety of regular websites. They're having that conversation in their churches, in their neighborhood groups, at the barber shop or whatever else. So reaching out in those more informal networks for those kind of jobs. It's also not unless you're looking for women, it's not the place that we're looking to increase our racial diversity. It's in the more professional positions where we're seeing a less diverse applicant pool.
Yeah, I would just say, I think this is part, we were showing today is part of, needs to be part of a larger strategy. This is like the game, like the air game, like being out there, being present. People are out there actively looking, then they see us when they go to these kinds of sites. But having a strong ground game is what's really going to make the difference for us, and that means much more engagement for all of us, including those sitting up here outside of Brookline, and engaging with folks, of course, who live here already, but those folks who might want to work here who don't live here. It's going to just require a much more intentional effort. And that we've all got to be a part of that. So I think the regular reporting with engagement from the community, and of course the good work that you and your team are doing, I think is going to be essential to seeing some progress.
Okay, thank you.
So can we calendar quarterly reports then? Seems like that's what people want.
Sure.
Yeah. And one of the quarterly reports, why don't we just post it as a public hearing so we can solicit thoughts and responses from the community.
Okay.
Anything else? So do we pay for ZipRecruiter, Monster, Facebook, LinkUp, Glassdoor, Indeed?
No, that's provided through our contract with Clearco, which does our applicant tracking system.
Okay.
So those are provided as part of the contract with them.
Okay, good.
One of the things I also do is I have a regular LinkedIn account that I post our professional level jobs and up through my own account, because the base level account for a LinkedIn recruiter account is about $20,000. So,
Yeah, good.
and the response rate for a personal post from an individual is about 70% higher than posting on say, the town's website. So
Good.
it
Okay.
goes from there. Anything else?
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Brown, I'll give you a minute. This
Take
is
30
out of
seconds.
our,
One of the issues with recruiting through a national service for Boston is that if people don't live here, they're very unlikely to move here because of the cost. And if we're looking for young people, I'll say young people, entry-level positions and the like, my recruiting experience told me that some of the best places to go through, UMass Boston, so you have to set up a relationship with UMass Boston, Northeastern University, the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts, and there were a couple of other organizations that once they actually began to trust that you were serious about hiring different people, then they would make it a point to not only circulate your information, but to invite you to events. And as Raul put it, it's really about, there's a fair amount of pounding the pavement up front, but once you do that, the applicants will come in, and I'm talking about, accountants and attorneys, and, I've worked in mostly a professional environment, but,
I suggest you put those ideas in an email to Ms. Bragas to follow up on.
I will do that, but I also wanted you all to know that there's some ground truthing that the town has to do
Right.
in its surrounding
Got
environment.
it. Okay. Next, authorization to hire. Question of authorization. I'm sorry, did we vote on that?
I think.
Yeah, we did it. No, we did.
Before you began the
Right,
conversation.
okay. Okay, authorization to hire recreation. Question of authorization to fill the position of lead teacher, GN04, in the recreation department.
Good evening, Mr. Green, Chairman Green, and the rest of the select board members. My name is Lee Jackson. I'm the Recreation Director, and I'm here tonight to ask for your authorization to hire a lead teacher at Sewell Early Childhood. We have had a vacancy recently. Martha Karen has moved on to seek another opportunity, and I'm here tonight to make sure that I request your authorization to hire a new teacher. Will obviously help us meet our ratios, but more importantly, we want to maintain a developmentally appropriate classroom and make sure our curriculum is top-notch. And we are going to look for an excellent teacher to replace Miss Karen. So that's why I'm here this evening.
Any questions? No? Anything else you'd like to say?
Happy New Year.
Good answer.
I apologize, I called you Lee instead of Ms. Jackson, so I apologize.
Lee is fine.
Okay. In this setting, formality is more important. Okay. So, yeah.
Sure, if you could just remind me and maybe others about the program there at Sewell and kids are going there, what the program's all about, what this teacher will be doing.
Absolutely. Sewell Early Childhood Education is world-renowned, actually, for its curriculum. We have people visiting us from China to see what we're doing. We have a very interesting mix of philosophies, Reggio Emilia and Montessori. There are 85 children now going to school at Sewell, and it is highly regarded for its excellence and quality in curriculum. It's essentially one of the major aspects that I'm proud of, really, is its focus on diversity and celebrating nature as a way of learning. So there's a lot of experimentation being done in the classroom with paints, arts, and music, and a lot of time with the kids kind of leading the learning, so to speak, playing with colors and with art to figure out how it works. But it's a fantastic curriculum, and our director, Gina Tizik, is well respected in her community in Reggio Emilia Montessori, and we are now an accredited program due to her excellent work. She hires a great diverse workforce, and we're really proud of it. Yeah.
Is this accessible for all families? How do they access it? Is this
Yes,
something-
it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. We do have scholarship funding too, as we do with all of recreation programming, and it is accessible for everyone, and you can find out more information online at brooklinerec.com.
What is your regular tuition, though?
Honestly, I'm sorry, tonight I don't have that on
Yeah.
the top of my head, but it is, it's
Pretty-
within the market range
Yeah.
for programs like this.
This is not your problem, but the market range means that many middle-class families are really pained to use these services. It's a problem, it's a national problem, and it's really hurting this country as well as, of course, our community. But I think the fact that we have scholarships is good, but we can't assume that solves the problem, because it only solves part of it. So.
Certainly not, certainly not. It is a terrible situation, yes.
So, any other questions?
No, if it's possible to provide some more information to the board on just, I'd just love to learn more, and including some of these questions about the number of kids that are there, the tuition, what scholarships are available. I just, to inform myself so that I can inform others in the community, that'd be helpful.
Fantastic, I will do that.
Okay. On favor of authorizing the filling of the position of lead teacher, GN-04, in the Recreation Department, indicate by saying aye. Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Jackson. Okay, boards and commissions interviews. The following candidates for appointment to the following boards and commissions will appear for interview. First, the Cannabis Mitigation Advisory Committee. We have three interviewees, Donnell O'Neill, Ann Trecca, and Michael Zorro. Mr. O'Neill, you want to start off? And tonight we have six interviews, so let's try to keep focused on the interviews. And I want to just indicate something before we start, and you just happen to be here.
No problem.
Mr. O'Neill, but I want to make sure that people are clear that our criteria for memberships includes, and this is from our webpage, reflect the racial, ethnic, economic, and other diversities of the town, or applicants because of the nature of the committee's responsibility, or individuals from groups that may bring a needed perspective to the committee. 2, have a diversity of ideas, perspectives, experiences, and skills. 3, members with the experience or skills in the specific areas of the committee's responsibility. And 4, will work as a team and be active contributors to accomplish the purposes of the committee. So people should bear that in mind as we go through these interviews. Mr. O'Neill, tell us why you want to be on this commission, or this committee.
Well, first of all, hello, everyone. And for every reason that you just said right before I spoke, I'm speaking now. I feel like I could bring the diversity to this committee that's needed. I've been involved in regards to cannabis, and way back with the ZBA in 2017 when we started going over the regulations in town in general. So to be short, because you have a lot of interviews that you're going to have here, I feel I'm qualified. I feel I'm a voice that could be heard and needed on this committee. And I would love to be at a discussion and talk about it before we get to town meeting to discuss it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions? I mean, I'll ask, tell me what you think. You live in the neighborhood of the NETA facility, so tell me what you think the issues that this committee should be looking at from your perspective as a resident.
Well, the public consumption is a big deal. So where I'm at the Village train stop, is where a lot of people get off to go to get to NETA. The bus stop, the 66 is right there. So really, the public consumption has been it's been a lot. It's been on my mind a lot lately. To where actually that host community agreement money does go proportionally well, I want to see it spread out equally. I would also like to see some of that money go to the seniors. So I in transportation wise and stuff like that. So I just want to be a voice at that table and to hear what others have to say in that committee on their thoughts and where they think the mitigation should happen. And just be able to have my 2 cents as well.
Any other questions? We all know you.
What's one meaningful thing that you think this committee might be able to do short-term and maybe even long-term?
Well, I think this committee will lessen the debate at town meeting, basically. You know what I mean? Figure we can hash everything out, or most of everything out, at this committee. We will have something present to you guys before a town meeting, the advisory board, and so forth. So basically, I really want to do this just so I can be able to hash it out before town meeting. One second, get with you.
Less a question, more a comment, and you don't need to respond to this. I think one of the things that I would like this committee to take a look at is some screening between White Place and the NETA parking lot. And it may be a good idea, it may be a bad idea, it may be practical or impractical, but I think it should be under consideration by this committee. So I'm putting in my plug early and often for this.
White Place,
I'm actually thinking some public art on that fence.
Yes, exactly.
And there's a number of different ways to do it, but there's my pitch.
No,
Yeah, we've discussed that with NETA, and they're amenable to that.
Yeah.
One problem is the MBTA, I think, owns that fence, but that can be worked around, and this committee, can really help figure out,
That's a great idea.
I mean, there's a permissions issue, which
Okay.
that gets into, but there's also a expense issue to create whatever that screening is, so,
Okay.
and that's where I see this group coming in, so.
Okay.
I'm
That's
putting
a
in
great
my picture
idea.
early and often, as I said.
No, public art, wherever we can get it
Yeah,
is
that's a
great.
great idea.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions? No? Okay.
All right,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Ms. O'Neill.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, Ann Trecker.
Hello.
Hello?
I'm you want to know why I'm a Precinct 6 town meeting member, and I live virtually across the street from Netta on White Place, actually, right across from the parking lot, down a few houses. And I feel, just as a member of the neighborhood and as a town meeting member who has some understanding of the governmental process, some of the town, that we need people like me on the committee. I have mixed feelings about marijuana. I voted to legalize it. I was not unhappy to see it come to our neighborhood, but I feel like the size of this operation is just way out of scale with what the neighborhood can handle. Having said that, I'd like to see this money be used in a way that will reduce the impact and bring out the positive aspects of this enterprise in our community, the money that we can use for all sorts of things, and even other people coming to our community. So I feel like the committee needs a measured voice, as well as, someone who I have really listened to what my neighbors have had to say. I haven't witnessed everything they've seen, but I have witnessed lots and lots of public consumption, and I would like to see something done to try to alleviate that problem.
That's a problem throughout this community, even in areas like where I live that doesn't have a cannabis facility. So if the committee can address that problem and figure out ways that we can reduce that would be helpful throughout the community.
Well, I think that the $100 citations could go a long way, having police there. And the problem is you see someone smoking on the street, and by the time you get someone to come and do something about it, they're gone. So I've noticed an increase on White Place. I've always noticed it in Emerson Park, I've got to say, but I have noticed a real increase on my street. You really, in the evenings, you almost always smell it when you walk out the door. And it's not from the facility, it's from people walking up and down the street. And the traffic's a huge issue as well, the parking and the Ubers and so on.
So one clarifying question. You've applied for both the mitigation committee, but also the parking benefits district?
Yep.
Yeah, just one.
And I really don't need to be on two committees.
Yes,
So
yeah.
I was really, sort of just quickly was really looking to be in the parking benefits district committee. I'd worked a little bit with Chris Dempsey on this Warren article, and then other people in my neighborhood really thought that I ought to step up for the marijuana committee as well. So that's sort of what drove me to do both of these. But
So
again, I do not
open
need to
season
be
for
on two.
either committee for questions.
Yeah.
So you reference in your application that you worked as a consultant. I'm just wondering if you've got some.
Did I work as yeah, I do.
A consultant, so professional background.
Yeah, I'm a pediatric occupational therapist.
Okay.
So I work with children with autism, with attention deficit disorder, with learning disabilities. I work with their parents. I work with their teachers. I work with school administration. So I think that even though I'm really, I'm an OT, I'm not a parking expert or a cannabis expert, but I feel like I am very good at listening to people, at hearing other people's points of views, and combining that to come up with a solution. I feel like that's just really one thing I could bring to the committee.
So the skill set is listening,
Exactly.
synthesizing, translating into
Yeah.
actionable.
Understanding where people's views are coming from, even if they're not my own. I feel like I'm pretty good at that.
And you went to Temple University.
I did.
That's always
A long time ago, I went to Temple University. That wasn't for my own.
I grew up in Philadelphia, so whenever I see someone,
I lived in West Philly for a really long time and went to Temple, but that was my dance degree. That was before I became an OT, so that was a whole different
well, they're
life.
related, aren't they?
What?
I think they're related.
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah, some
I get
people-
to move around in both jobs, yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Sure. So thinking about when you thought about how best to sort of use these funds and deploy our resources, one of the things you've mentioned so far is around policing. I'm a little concerned about using policing as a tool to solve social problems. I'm wondering if there are other ideas you have in mind that wouldn't require police.
Yeah, no,
that might help solve some
I
of the
agree,
issues,
and I wasn't.
that we're seeing in the area.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I completely agree with you. I just feel like, I feel like the problem with NEDA is that it's so large. You know, so if you have 100 people coming a day, like one person might smoke on the street, but if you have thousands of people coming a day, like 25 people might smoke on the street. So I feel like the numbers are really huge. And we can't really do anything about that at this point, but I'd love to see something happen around, you know, around the traffic issues, around the way they're using their line to get in. I mean, I live right there. There's almost never a day that there isn't a huge line. I agree that screening the parking lot from White Place would be a really excellent idea. I think that there's some benefits to having it there because it brings people into the community. And I'd like to be welcoming of, I mean, most of the people that come there are, you know, perfectly, you know, welcome and are, you know, don't smoke on the street. So those are some of my ideas, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Did you have something? Okay.
All set? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next, Michael Zorob. I hope I pronounced your name right. Just call you Michael.
No worries. It's simpler than you're making it out to be. It's just Michael Zurab, like exactly how it's spelled.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm Michael Zurab. I live, as you may recall from last week, I live on Longwood Avenue in a micro studio unit. I live quite close to where Sanctuary will be, what has sat as kind of a vacant storefront pretty much since I've lived there, the old Pier 1 store. And yeah, I'm a member of the Coolidge Corner community. Because of my tendency to eat out, I am in that area all the time between Lee's Burgers, Curry House, Shawarma King. I walk by there most days. I also take the bus, the 66, so that by virtue of that fact, I see that area multiple times a day. Of course, nothing's happening right now. It's just sort of a quiet construction site, but it's an area where I have a lot of sort of visibility without really even trying. So that's one reason why I want to serve on this committee, is just by virtue of the fact that I live here and I care a lot about this area. But secondly, I think I have kind of a professional background that's relevant to the issues this committee has to consider. I'm a doctoral candidate in the Department of Government at Harvard, and a lot of my work focuses on local politics, the management of issues of disorder, and also substance use epidemiology. So I have some academic publications related to the opioid crisis for the most part, several in that area, and also one paper about the regulatory environment for cannabis testing in Washington State. So I mean, I have kind of really focused knowledge on this area that I think could bring a valuable perspective.
And for the audience, his papers were submitted with this application, and they take up about 100 pages of the packet. So. But worthy use for those 100 pages.
Yeah,
Very interesting subject.
Yeah.
Thanks. As far as what I think I would like to see this committee accomplish, I think one first order issue that we have to address as a committee that I think would be helpful for the public debates going around the town is to really define and measure the problem. So we're talking a lot about nuisance and mitigating nuisance, but it's not obvious how levels of nuisance created by NEDA have varied over time, for example. So is nuisance worse when the store first opened and the lines were longer than they are now, or not? Was nuisance worse before or after town meeting allocated $800,000 and hired some police officers who are now sort of patrolling around Brookline Village? Actually, on Saturday, I happened to be eating out in Brookline Village, and I saw a police officer walking up and down the sidewalk, and I'm assuming that was in some way related to town meetings hiring 3 full-time police officers specifically for mitigating disorder. So Yeah, what exactly is the problem that we're trying to mitigate, and how do we measure it? And that's something I'd really like to work with the neighborhood liaison or the ombudsman or whatever the title of that position is, and the staff members of this committee, is coming up with measures that we can use to say, okay, on this day there were this many incidents that we can reasonably attribute to the existence of marijuana stores in the neighborhood, and track that over time. And ideally, it would be good to have that measure be back-looking, so we can look at how, for example, the reduction of hours may or may not have impacted these kinds of things. So that's the primary thing that I'd like to look at, is really developing a good measure that we can track over time, and that's sort of objective. So we don't have this sort of strange hearsay narrative where, you have some, like Sam Levine of White Place, who comes and speaks before town meeting and says, I haven't noticed at all. And then you have other people come before town meeting and say, like, my life has been ruined since this store's opened. I mean, obviously the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but it would be good to be able to actually track the problem and not just have what sounds like a sort of unproductive dialogue between people that it's very hard to sort of adjudicate. So that's the main issue that I want to work on, and I think that would be fruitful both for Netta and the issues around Netta, but also Sanctuary and the other two stores when they open.
Great. Any other questions?
Third place award winner, MIT Hack for Democracy.
Oh, God.
Third place is a pretty big deal.
I should probably take that off the
It's
CV.
the Hack for Democracy.
Yeah.
Please explain.
Oh, it was just some silly thing that I think it was called the Democracy Lab at MIT was doing. So for a couple of days, a bunch of folks got together and worked with some public data that they were giving out to create some app that was supposed to be useful in some way. If I recall correctly, my team made a map of stop and frisks in Boston using the field interview database that the ACLU got from suing the Boston Police Department. So they had just sort of recently put that out, and so we made like a little application where you could look at those incidents. But yeah.
In like an afternoon?
No, like 2 days. Not quite an afternoon.
Still.
Yeah. But it wasn't just me, obviously. Teams, there's added value to that. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, I just think that your comments really rung true with me. I think to go one step further, the efficacy of the expenditures is also something that really comes out of data and analysis and having a clear metric for success. So we will always want to spend money wisely and see something beyond anecdotal indication that it's working or not working.
Definitely.
Great.
So I'm curious, you're interested in, making sure that the data, the problems are documented. So how do you do that? I mean, are you just assuming you'll take testimony from people who are seeing it? Or are you suggesting that we're going to have police officers on every street writing down how many people they see smoking and how many people they see urinating? And
I think to the extent that we have those records over time, that would be useful. I mean, of course, the police...
Which records?
Records about illicit incidents. I mean, certainly the police do write down incident reports, and that's
yes,
one
they
metric.
do, but I think the prior applicant was correct. One thing that happens is that, for instance, someone sees out of their window that someone is urinating on their car, and they call the police, but by the time the police get there, the person is long gone.
Right. Well, in that case, the call for service is itself a meaningful data point, right? The fact that someone decided that it was worth calling 911 it is meaningful. So that's one. I mean, you can think about something like litter, for example, where we, in the town meeting allocation, apparently hired full-time staff for litter mitigation related to Netta. I mean, that person's job is to collect the litter. We could, on a daily basis, have that person tally how much litter they found. That would be one example. I mean, so I think the three issues for me are public safety, broadly defined, and as you're hinting at, for minor crimes or for civil infractions, it's not always obvious how to measure the incidents, and incidents is probably just measuring enforcement a lot of the times, like with public consumption. Litter and traffic. And so those are the three areas that I'd like to find measurements for. But I think calls for service, so if somebody decided to call 911 because they saw somebody urinating, that would be how you would measure something like that. So an interesting question would be, when NETA opened, how many more such calls did you get? When the hours were reduced, how many, was there, Sunday morning now, it doesn't open for adult use until noon. Are we no longer getting calls of this nature in the morning? These kinds of questions. But yeah, that is precisely the problem. I appreciate your point, I guess is something I should say. It's not an immediately obvious problem, precisely because the incidents that are being described are transient. Yeah.
It's not an easy problem because you have other factors like construction, the chaos of. all
So
this
for traffic,
construction.
for example, yeah, that could potentially, traffic's a huge problem everywhere.
Yeah, we often use this, there's a lot of construction in the area, but, generally the construction is, workers are there from, say 7 or 7:30 in the morning till 3 or 3:30. So, if these incidents are occurring in the late afternoon, early evening, it's not construction in general. It just does, it's not logical to assume that it is. So I think we need that kind of documentation as well.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Zurab.
Thanks.
Okay. That's it for Cannabis Mitigation Advisory Committee. We will be voting on the applicants once we've interviewed them all and have sort of digested what we hear. Next, Brookline Village Parking Benefit District Advisory Board. We have 3 candidates, Lisa Wasserman Sivan, Fred Perry, and Ann Trecca. Lisa Wasserman, is it Sivan or Sivan? Sivan, okay.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening. Tell us why you want to participate on this committee and what you have to offer.
Thank you for asking. I am a Brookline resident, and I am a small business owner. I have owned my own design practice for over 20 years, focused in residential design in Brookline, and for the past 4 years as the co-founder and owner of the Village Works, co-working space in Brookline Village, and I've seen some of you there, so thank you for visiting. Our goal is building community through design, and maybe equal to cannabis, parking is a huge challenge to the neighborhood. So as a business owner and resident, I'm pretty aware of the issues involved in parking and how it affects businesses and how it affects the retail market, visitors to the neighborhood. I'm also active in the Brookline Village Business Association, so we share amongst ourselves business owner issues around parking. I also want to say that I wrote myself a few notes so I would remember exactly what to say. I believe as a designer, I have a particular vision about how to solve problems around these challenges. So in parking, let's not talk exactly about how we will get the parking done, but what will we do in budgeting with monies that we'll gain from the parking benefits programming? What would we do in Brookline Village? So my focus is a little bit on effective, efficient, budget-driven decisions for beautification in the neighborhood. And actually, the goal in the Village Works was to build vibrancy, community, neighborliness, and having the streets be more welcoming for walking, which maybe could help NETA also. The cleanliness issues, beautification projects in general around the village, that would be my focus and why I would like to be part of the committee, so that those monies are used in what I would find to be budget-friendly but effective ways. I've also had a good experience in working with economic development and the planning department around different building projects, small and not so small, in Brookline Village. So I have some idea of how the process runs through the town. ideation through design development, through construction, let's just say. So those would be my skills. I think I also am open-minded to what the committee would decide to do, so I don't have a preconceived idea about what the solution is for parking in Brookline.
But you could come up with some ideas for beautifying that fence.
Sure?
Okay.
We can work on that too. The committees will have to meet together.
Yeah. Any questions? You're right there next to, I think, one or two doors down from Netta? Looking at the parking situation, do you have any ideas as to how this committee could help other than beautification in that area?
I think what we just spoke very briefly about, construction vehicles in the village, I think is actually a true challenge to the neighborhood, because that is not the in and out of parking that we actually want to have in the retail environment and business environment in Brookline Village. A construction worker who's coming and parking is actually there before the work day for most people, so they've taken all the spots before anybody's come to shop, go to the hairdresser, or come to the Village Works, or even go to Netta. So you might want to look, even before we have our own parking problems, is large construction that's bringing lots of vehicles to the village are eating up all the spaces to start. That creates more traffic also, which creates other parking challenges. So, I mean, I don't have to solve this problem right now, but I think that's actually something that's already starting us at a negative in the parking experience of Brookline Village.
I would hope that the committee could interact with the building department on maybe finding different places for people to park.
You could imagine there's, the hang tag system that we have, or the different kinds of passes that you have. It's easy to get a construction parking permit for all-day parking. It is less easy to get a metered tag. So we make it very easy for construction vehicles to park all day in any space, including residential streets, and a little harder for businesses to offer parking to their employees. That's just one thing that I think of right now.
So one of the challenges that I think Brookline Village will face, because there is a shortage of parking for a number of reasons, to do anything multimodal, i.e. like micromobility lanes, bicycle lanes, whatever term you kind of want to use, usually that means taking a parking space away. And that will be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people who recognize that there's already a shortage. So now you're asking for there to be more of a shortage. What is your thought about giving up a parking space that might, over the long term, actually help ease traffic congestion?
So the bike lanes, scooter lanes, bus lanes, ways to drive traffic to those to things other than a car with a single driver is critical. And at the Village Works, we highlight, we give everybody a map where to get to the T, what bus lines are coming by here. We were part of a conversation with Netta about creating a Lyft and Uber pickup location, not on Harvard Street, but on Route 9 by their parking lot entrance, because the Uber and Lyft stops actually create more traffic by stopping and starting in the way of the normal flow of traffic. So they had been, we had a conversation with, Netta actually is a member of the Village Works too, and they have meetings at our space, so we have a good relationship with them. And they were very easygoing about changing that, so that now if you kind of come up with their address and you want to get picked up in a Lyft or an Uber, it will automatically go to their parking lot and not just anywhere on Harvard Street. So to roundabout way of saying, anything that moves people out of a single vehicle occupancy is going to create a better flow of traffic and open up more parking spots. And we do our best to just encourage those who can walk, bike, take the T, take the bus.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Fred Perry.
We're running, I think, about an hour behind schedule. I think we're
Oh, my God, yeah.
probably going to be another 25 minutes before we get to our 7 o'clock hearings.
I'll talk fast.
I apologize. So.
My name is Fred Perry, and I lived in Brookline for nearly 50 years. I've worked in Brookline Village for more than 40 years. My office is now over on Route 9 between here and the hotel, and I walk past Netta every day, for example, going to work, and back. I live in the Central Village. I was in my past. I haven't been very active in town affairs recently, but I was on the Conservation Commission. I was president of Green Space Alliance. I was a town meeting member, and I was a member of the advisory committee. I don't think that those are so important as my really long experience with Brookline Village and understanding of this place, and really, it's good experience and it's real experience. I would say that I will have a lot of ideas when it comes to how to deal with the problems of the village, some of which are created by the town itself. But if, for example, if we had a little bit of money, the town is when it comes to snow removal, the worst offender. And if we could keep our sidewalks clear in a better way, it would be good for the merchants. And there are parts of our sidewalks here in the village that don't get cleared at all. For example, on Station Street, where at the base of the wall across from the T-stop, where there's a parking lot above, if it were a homeowner whose space that was, someone would be turning him in for a fine. That's just one example of the kinds of things that a little bit of money could save or could solve if we had the ability to use it. But I think that there are many more things that could be done, and I haven't got a list to offer you now, but I do think that I offer my experience and my interest in this, and be happy to respond to any questions or whatever.
Any questions?
I'm interested to understand a little bit more about your experience being on the Conservation Commission.
Mm-hmm.
What was your experience like?
Well, I mean, I was only on Conservation Commission for 1 year because I was then tapped to become the president of the Green Space Alliance, which was a busy job, shall we say, at that time. That was, I'm trying to remember if I had, where that fit in my experience with the town, whether it was before or after I was a town meeting member. Or it certainly was before I was on the advisory committee on that, and it wasn't long experience. Myrna Lowy replaced me when I left. I think he's still a member of the commission.
He is.
Did you enjoy it? How did you work well with the other commission members?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Betsy Shore Gross was the chair at that point, and she tapped me to join. Asked me if I would apply. I did. She was wonderful, and I wish she were still in town.
We all do. So any other questions?
I'd just like to hear a little bit more. You mentioned some other ideas. I think your comments around sort of snow removal are well noted. I think that's something that I'm glad you brought to our attention, and we should take care of regardless of the work of this committee.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So-
I was thinking of putting in a town meeting warrant article that would somehow address that, and I don't know
Okay.
exactly how to do it.
And so
How about not doing it? And getting DPW just.
Yeah, you
do
just
it.
talked to us. But I'm wondering if there are other things. You said you had a list. You won't share, but maybe just give us
Well,
one thing on
I'm
those.
not saying I've made a list, but I
Right.
certainly have thought of things, and I can think of more things now. There is, again, if you have some money, there are things you can do. There is parking around that is not right here. If you ran a free shuttle that went to the places where there is parking and told people, park here, and you can circulate into the village without having to find a parking space in the village, that would be, I don't know, you have to look at the expenses, how much does it cost, and so forth. But there's a hell of a big parking garage right there on Pearl Street, and I'm sure it's not full. You might need to have some kind of parking vouchers, but again, if a merchant can stamp your parking ticket and provide you with a free shuttle, it's a different ballgame than if you have to go in and pay $25 or whatever it is to go in that garage. The garage is not accessible at all at full rate to most people.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So, Ann Trecker again.
I think
Yeah, she's on both committees.
I-
Do you want to be interviewed again, or?
Not
do you
really.
stand by your-
Oh, my God, I've had a long day, and I haven't had dinner yet.
Why don't you just say why you want to be on
So
this
I got
committee?
involved in
Real
this.
quick and.
Okay, I'm going to be really quick. I got
dinner.
involved in this because I know Chris Dempsey, and he was writing this warrant article, and I live on White Place, which is arguably one of the hardest places to park in the whole town of Brookline. And I have, I could relay many stories of difficulties
Don't.
parking. And so I went to several meetings around this warrant article, and the thing that was that I liked the best about it was not necessarily raising rates on parking meters, but forming this committee, which I thought would be really, really important for business people and neighbors to talk together about the kind of competing needs of residents versus businesses with parking. And so that was, I feel like from experience, I know a lot about parking in Brookline Village. I was also the founding co-chair of the Emerson Garden Neighborhood Association. The first things that we worked on in that group were really around traffic and parking on Davis Avenue. We tried really hard to get a speed bump on Davis Avenue to no avail, and issues like that. So I have a little bit of background for the
Great.
history of that in the village.
So our interview of you for the Cannabis Mitigation Advisory Committee gave us a good picture of what you would do and how you would do it. So
You don't
unless
need to
someone
know
has
anymore.
a.
One thing I'd
specific
like to
question.
one thing I'd like to explore is some judicious use of residential parking, which I know is an unpopular concept, but there's some neighborhoods in Brookline who have certain hours of the day when residents can park, and I think that it might be something to look at, as well as negotiating with with the garage you were mentioning about, trying to see if there's some potential for opening up more parking spaces in the village. So
Thank
that's
you.
my two big issues, and
Okay.
you don't hear my voice anymore.
Okay, so again, we will be making or voting on membership on this committee once we've interviewed all of the applicants. So stay tuned. Next, to the Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations Commission, Elvira Perez. Hi.
Yes.
So tell us why you want to be on the commission
Yes,
and what
so-
you can contribute to it.
Yes, so my name is Elvira Perez, Elvira Perez in English. So I've lived here in Brooklyn for 12 years. My children went to Runkle and to the high school. We were very active members of that community. I led the Runkle PTO Welcome Wagon, which welcomed all the new families, local, national, and international. Loved it. And then also went ahead and I was elected for school council. At the high school, I was actively involved in the Brookline Parent Education Network. I was part of their advisory council for many years. And I noticed that as parents, we were lacking cultural competency in this very diverse community that the high school is. And the high school is like a small picture of what the whole town is. And I worked for over 2 years, and finally we created a tip sheet for parents regarding not only the part of race, but heritage, religion, and gender and sex orientation. So I feel that I have a little bit a lot of information to share. Now that my kids are out of the school, I thought that this was a great way to continue participating, giving back to the town through this diversity and inclusion committee. I think that what I would like to see from the committee is hopefully to have an inventory of many initiatives that are happening in the town. There's a lot of things happening regarding diversity and inclusion, student-led, teacher-led, citizen-led, and, see what's happening, how this committee can boost those initiatives, and then see the parts that are missing, people that I feel that live here in town but do not have a voice. They don't even know that they can have one, or they don't know how to have one. So that's what I think I would like to see, a more dynamic community, a lot of contact with what's happening outside. That's what I would like to see. That's it.
Any questions?
Sure. I noticed on here, and correct me if it's wrong on the document, but you haven't been to a committee meeting yet or commission
No, I
meeting
have
yet.
not.
Okay. I'd like to see that. I mean, I've heard from the chair of the commission that certainly she would like for people before applying to have actually attended a meeting, and certainly I take those comments to heart. And before I would vote affirmatively on someone, I'd like to know that they've attended a meeting. There's actually one next Wednesday. So that's an opportunity to do that if you're available. And I think that might be my approach going forward also for other folks, for other committees and boards and commissions as well. So it's not just about you in this particular commission, but I wanted to throw that out there. So you can be just more familiar with the work that the commission is currently doing, and then what else they plan to do. But certainly some of your experience that I read here speaks for itself, as well as your work within the schools. I could see being really helpful for the commission.
Thank you. And I also would like to add that diversity is many times seen as, just a white, an African-American and brown situation, but it's so much more, and that's my experience. It's the students from India, the families who are Muslim, families who have members that are transitioning, gender transitioning. So I just feel that there's so much more. And I would like to see that happen, to see that diversity is much more than just race or just 2 or 3 races. Yes.
Can I ask a
So,
question?
so my homework is to go to a meeting and then let you know. Is that how it works?
Sure, we'll probably hear from the chair herself. Yeah,
Okay, good.
I think she'll let us
Okay.
know. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, I actually have a question.
Yes.
And this is not a critical question, okay, so don't interpret that. So you indicate that you want to be the voice of the white Latino community.
Yes.
I guess that's sort of, I found that interesting.
Yes.
I don't usually think of the Latino community as even have color gradations
Exactly.
in many times. So
I
how do you?
I was very shocked when there was a situation at school and someone told me, well, you're a white Latino. I didn't even know that was a thing. I said, oh my God, I'm going to make a T-shirt that says I'm white, I'm Latino, I'm proud. I was really shaken with that situation. And when I started, conversations and talking, it's a thing. And
Right,
unfortunately, for many people, Latino is people who are brown. And no, we come in all colors, all religions, all politics, everything. Latino is a heritage, and that's part of the education that I said I'm going to bring forward. And in every meeting that I was able to say that, I would say it. And a lot of people were very grateful to understand. But again, understanding that here, it's very important to place you in a, within the universe in a box. I understand and I have owned that that is my place. And I also understand that there's a lot of white Latinos that don't have a voice because we're not white, but we're not, for some people, we're not Latino. See?
Yeah. I would hope that we can release people from the cages of these boxes
Yes.
that we're in.
Exactly.
Growing up in Philadelphia, there's a very large Puerto Rican community adjacent to North Philadelphia where I live. And you would see people from that community who were from the range of my complexion to blonde and blue-eyed.
Yes.
And we all viewed them as Puerto Rican.
Yes.
The issue of color was totally irrelevant in their eyes as well as, as an outsider in our eyes. So.
And that's the thing, in our country, we're not asked our race. And I come from Venezuela, South America, never, they never ask you what color are you, So,
I'm not saying that those aren't issues that come up, but,
Yeah. And then again, in that area also, for example, families from India who have told me, I'm not white, but I'm not black, but there's not a box, So there's white Latino is just an example of those groups that are here in Brookline that, again, like I said, are need a voice and need to feel included. And not just like the two visible extremes that we are used to. So I hope to fill all the big middle. Yes.
So I have a quick question, I hope.
Yes.
And then just a comment. First, how did you hear about this opportunity? And then the comment is, there was a warrant article brought at town meeting that may affect the composition of this commission because it imbued a couple of investigatory powers. So I just wanted you to realize that the commission might be undergoing some changes.
Another one. Okay, so I in spring, I think it was late winter last year, there was a workshop offered by the town called Leadership and Decision-Making in Community Organizations. And I was drawn to it. I said, great. And there were two people from the town there and other members. Very interesting workshop. And not only the information that, we shared, but the people, the participants, that was priceless, the network of people, because it was people, everyone in their community. Asian, here in Brookline, but, Asians and low income, it was just really fascinating. And the person from the town was saying, listen, we want people to participate. So she brought us a list of all the committees, and I just went online and checked each and every one of them, and I felt that this was the one where I could be of most, I could give the most.
Excellent, thank
Thank you.
you for that
Yes,
feedback.
and if it's going to be reorganized and I'm not part of it, that's okay, no problem.
I just didn't want it to come as a surprise. It's going to happen
Yes.
over the next year or so.
Yes, no hard feelings. I'll find something else to do. No, I know, there's a lot to do in town, so yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we had a applicant for the Commission on Disability who withdrew, so we'll skip over that. 209 Harvard Street, 40B project is also taken off the agenda because there's an extension in the deadline there. So we'll go next to our public hearing scheduled for 7 p.m. I apologize, 55 minutes late, but that's what happens when we take up important issues in addition to other things. So, request of approving the application of Three Treasures Concept, Inc., doing business as Zhang's Hunan Kitchen, Si Chao Chang, I hope I pronounced that correctly, or close enough. President for an application for amendments to an existing wine and malt beverages license to be drunk on the premises, and to amend the application to, or the license to change the officer's stock ownership interests of the company. So introduce yourself and explain to us what you're doing.
Good evening. My name is Mei Hui Hu. I represent the applicant corporation. Next to me is the manager, the current manager, and he's staying on as manager and also the majority shareholder of the corporation, and he runs the day-to-day operation. So there's going to be very little change. Again, I think we came here maybe a couple months ago. This is, again, another corporate restructure. There are new investor who came in, and there were some investors who have left.
Okay. Any questions?
I have a question. So, did this involve a change in menu, or a change in chef, or a change in the quality of the food?
Actually, we update the menu because in my new management, actually we also change two of the chef because another two of chef they are older shareholder. So right now they quit. So we have a new partner, and that partner they bring another new chefs, and we provide the new menu and the new foods. But anyway, yeah, we still do the authentic Chinese Hunan food. The new chef is also from Hunan province in China. So I think, yeah, our quantity of food is still, I even think it increased, yeah, to say, yeah.
Well, I hope it hasn't, these changes won't diminish it, because I do live 3 blocks away. I've eaten there many times. I like it very much. And so I would be hesitant to vote for something that diminished the quality of the food.
Okay,
Just to be clear about where I stand.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? This is a public hearing, so if there are any questions, comments, observations from the audience, please step up. No? Okay. So, no more questions. I move approval of the application of Three Treasures Concept, Inc., doing business as Zhang's Hunan Kitchen, Si Chao Chang, President, amending existing license to accommodate a change of officers' stock ownership interests. All in favor? Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you very
And
much.
keep that menu.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Next, transfer of license, pledge of collateral, request of approving the application of FCLP Corporation to transfer its Section 15 retail package store wines and malt beverages license to TJ Convenience, Inc., doing business as TJ Convenience Store, Sunny H. Shaw, manager at 182 Thorndike Street, number A. Okay, introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Attorney Tom Truax of Salem, Massachusetts, on behalf of the proposed transferee, TJ Convenience, Inc. With me to my immediate left is Mr. Haresh Kumar Patel. He is the president and 100% shareholder of the corporation. And to his left is Mr. Sunny Shah. He is the director of the corporation. He's also the proposed licensed manager. The underlying transaction is fairly straightforward. It's contained in the purchase and sale agreement, which is part of the package. The only thing that I bring up is the fact that the seller is financing a portion of the purchase price and has requested a pledge of the license as collateral for that loan. Mr. Patel comes before you with experience in the package store business. He owns 2 package stores already. He owns Chansky's Market, which is in 1700 Commonwealth Avenue in Brighton, a similar college area, to where he is, to where TJ's is located, so he's aware of the clientele. He also owns a package store in Cambridge called First United Market. Mr. Patel is we don't call it TIPS training, we call it BAT training, which is with the Package Store Owners Association. They provide training in person, not these online courses. So he has been certified with Package Store Owners Association for training. Mr. Sonny Shaw, he also comes before you with approximately 3 years of experience in the package store business. He is currently clerking at Mr. Patel's Chansky's Market to get more experience in the local market. He's been there for the past 2 months and will be there obviously probably about another 2 months as the process winds its way through the ABCC into the closing. I would also bring up the fact that there is a card reader machine in the store, and the current owner, Mr. Luis Perez, has spoken to me and given me all the information which Mr. Patel and Mr. Shaw already knew about, but he helped enlighten me as to what's going on there. So there is a pretty...
Describe, what is
It's
this?
a card reader for licenses, for liquor license.
Oh, card reader.
So there's a
Card reader.
ID, it's an
Okay,
ID
yeah, got it.
reader. So there's a robust identification process already in place. Nothing is going to change at the store. It's going to be the same identical store, just with new owners. And I think, as Mr. Perez has told me, there's been 10 years of no problems there, and I don't expect there to be any problems going in the future. And we'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Any questions from the board?
What is the craziest thing you've ever seen in your stores?
Nothing really.
You gotta give me something.
Crazy. Sometimes we see the drunks.
Okay, good enough.
Those aren't student drunks, I hope.
Fridays that are nice sometimes.
You don't sell them anything.
All of it.
I actually do have a side question. Is there recently, for instance, town meeting voted to. You sell cigarettes in your store?
Yes, we do.
And sort of voted to ban menthol flavored cigarettes, and there may be future bans of cigarettes as going forward as well. What's been the impact to your business, and are you finding ways to be able to make up the losses that you're likely seeing there?
Not really. It's hurting.
Yeah.
It's hurting big time.
And what are you doing as a business person? I'm sure you say, all right, well, we've lost that. I've got to figure out a way to make this business profitable. What are you doing to make that happen?
Oh, we can add anything in the convenience, so whatever we got already is everything there, so it's nothing opportunity to add anything.
Okay.
Except for the menthol. Menthol is a big hit for us.
Yeah. Okay. So you're trying to make it up on the other
It's
side.
going to happen in June, so let's see what happens.
Okay. All right. Just curious to hear more about that from business owners like yourselves that sell these products.
One thought, Girl Scout cookies.
You got it.
Popular.
$5 a box.
Well, the customer service, I know Mr. Patel for many years, and he runs a tight ship, and he also runs a clean store. I know TJ's is already clean, but I know what he did with Chansky's, I know what he did with First United, and that helps bring the customers in as well. He cleans up that store, so it's meticulous.
I just want to remind you that we've got some Brookline-specific regulations on the retail package store industry, and just familiarize yourselves with those, because what happens in Cambridge doesn't always fly here in Brookline. So post it on the website. We can supply it to you. Just read through and make sure you note the Brookline-specific requirements.
I'd also like to mention, I noticed your store opens on Sunday morning. The sale of alcoholic beverages in Massachusetts can't be sold before 10 a.m. I assume you're aware of that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the board? This is a public hearing. Are there any questions from the audience? No, I see none. So unless there are any other questions or comments from the board, I'll move approval of the application of FCLP Corporation to transfer its Section 15 retail package store wines and malt beverages license to TJ Convenience, Inc., doing business as TJ Convenience Store, Sonny H. Shaw, manager at 182 Thorndike Street. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, one more little housekeeping. The pledge needs to be voted on. It doesn't have to be included in the advertisement, but the pledge needs to be voted on as well.
Okay, and you have all the ABCC approvals of that?
Well,
they go for
Pledge
here
is in
first.
part of the package.
Okay,
The
okay.
Pledge of license. It needs your approval before it can go on to the
Okay,
agencies
got
with
it.
the transfer.
All right. Okay, I move approval of the pledge of the license to, who's it pledged to?
So it's going to be from TJ's to the current owner, which is FLCP.
Okay. From TJ Convenience Inc. to FCLP Corporation. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Now, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Great. Okay, filing of real estate transfer tax. Question of approving the filing of a bill to authorize a real estate transfer tax in accordance with the town meeting vote under Article 9 of the Fall 2019 Special Town Meeting. Let's see, Ms. Hamilton, you want to talk about that, or
Sure.
how do you want to do this?
So it was at our places,
Yeah.
so everybody's got a hard copy of it. And I want to thank the original co-petitioner, Deborah Brown, who's in the audience, for providing some edits that I think were badly needed. There was a warrant article brought before the fall town meeting that passed overwhelmingly at town meeting. And now it's upon the select board to hammer out the language that will go to the state legislature asking for home rule permission.
Okay, I have two comments, edits here. Oh, no, one comment and one edit. Section 3 says, "Funds raised by the fee shall be used for affordable housing. This may include renovation and rehabilitation of Brookline Housing Authority properties." A great purpose. I just think that we need to be aware of the need to balance those two things, because to the extent that large amounts of the funds go to rehabilitating the housing authority properties, we're taking away from building new affordable housing. And it's a sort of difficult and delicate balancing act, and we just need to be aware of that.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I would look to the Housing Advisory Board to help us with that balancing
Right,
act.
okay. The other thing, Section 7, Section 4, 5, and 6, it says the town may, by bylaw, the town may through policy, the town may through policy. And then Section 7 says the town shall, through policy, regulation, and/or bylaw, require prioritization of projects, including renovation projects that preserve or expand the supply of housing affordable for low-income renter households, and give particular consideration for such projects owned or sponsored by the Brookline Housing Authority. I think that should be may. The select board should have some discretion there. My concern has always been that, our focus on affordable housing can't just be on, 80% AMI, 90% or 100% AMI. We have to also give ourselves the flexibility to produce some middle-income housing. We can't have a community that's all poor and all rich. So that's my concern there. Anyone have any comment or objection to that?
Well, we were warned by one of our state representatives not to get too bogged down in the details.
Right.
So I would just kind of throw that out there. I think.
Well, shall is more bogged down in details than may, in that it's very prescriptive as opposed to giving us flexibility to sort of balance needs. That's, another reason why I would change shall to may.
Okay, I mean, I'm open to that. I'm also open to hearing what the other board members
Yeah.
think.
I am too.
I
Yeah.
have a comment. So I've been in Brookline long enough that I have seen, albeit rarely, downturns in the market, or times when the real estate market has not increased the way it has in recent years. It might be flat or go down a little bit or go up a little bit. And my concern is that in Section 1, under C and D, C basically, you're limiting it to 500,000 of residential real estate property transactions. But what you're actually doing in those times of downturn is taxing people who don't really have a gain, a capital gain under which to pay this transfer tax. They're taking it out of the principal that they put into the property in the first place. So that bothers me a bit. I think it's not really fair to those people, because what we're anticipating is that the fee would come out of the difference between the cost and the sale price, and that would be a decently robust number. But what if it's not? What if it isn't? And I know a couple of situations where young people bought a condo, and I think this was around 2006 or 7, and then 2008 came, and it was hard to sell it, and they had to take a loss and that kind of thing. So, I don't like the idea of having people pay out of their cost basis, in other words. I think that's not a good precedent to set. And believe it or not, there are some properties who, the one I'm thinking was a condo, and I think it originally cost them something, in the $700 range, and they had to sell it in the $600,000 range. So is that a situation where we want people to actually pay a tax, where they're only getting back their money, they have to pay their mortgage, they have to pay, they're not really left with very much. So
So in that case, they're underwater and
correct, and I just don't think that's the purpose of this. I think we should do a better job of examining how this can affect people. And I know that that's a little more complicated. So if somebody buys a house for $500,000 and they sell it for $600,000, then or let's not even do that. Let's go to say they buy it for $800,000, and then they sell it for $900,000. Shouldn't we just be taxing the difference between what they paid for it and what they sold it for?
So this has come up in the Land Bank Study Committee, and I can tell you that it would put an enormous staff burden on our tax assessors to do it the way that you're describing. I was looking at Somerville's language as a starting off point, and they don't even do a residential exemption. I was shocked, actually. We have always contemplated doing some sort of exemption. On the Land Bank Study Committee, we were actually looking at $750,000. 500,000, I think, was something that even the original warrant article that created the Land Bank Study Committee had put out there as a starting point.
Well, I mean, you could say the first 500, anything over 500, the first 500,000 is exempted, or the purchase price on record. That's not such a burden. I mean, if in fact, you're going to know that number. You're going to know, because it's recorded at the registry, you're going to know the number that somebody paid for the property. So if they paid $800,000 and they're selling it for $900,000, it's just the amount above what they paid for it. It seems to me that that's a fairer system. I'm
going off of what our chief tax assessor, Gary McCabe, had said, testified basically before our committee, that it would be an enormous staff burden to do it the way that you are describing.
Well, I think I'd have to ask Gary what he meant, but I think part of it is whether or not you've made a lot of cost improvements. So you have your basis, you bought the property for, say, $500, but then you put in $250 doing a new kitchen or whatever, you did a lot of renovation, then your cost is actually $750. And that's more difficult to track.
Yeah.
Much more difficult.
If I could just point out, I just ran the numbers very quickly. In the scenario that you proposed, in which the value of the property is now $100,000 more than when the buyer bought it, the cost at the time of transaction to the seller would be $4,000, which is, frankly, close to what it costs to rent a two-bed in some parts of Brookline right now for 1 month. And so I just want to point out, I mean, it's still real money, but I think it's important to look at the actual dollar figures we're talking about here. In a scenario like that, it would cost the seller at the point of sale $4,000.
Right, we're making the numbers up, but I'm just saying that it seems to me that especially if someone purchased the property for $600 and then they had to sell it for $550, is it fair to ask them to pay, they're probably have trouble paying their mortgage off. And not getting, if they're selling it for less than they bought it, which is a possibility in Brookline. We don't think of that. But it has happened. I've been here long enough. It happened in '88 and it happened in 2008.
Well, so
And just-
I'll just talk to the 2008, just because we have looked at pretty much all the sale data over the past, I'd say 20 years. And what we expected to see at the Land Bank Study Committee was a dip in 2008 because of what happened. What we actually found were that prices just stayed stagnant in Brookline. Everywhere else, they kind of dipped a little bit, but in Brookline, prices more or less stayed the same. So there are anecdotes, to be sure, where people lost money, but I don't think that is as common as I think you're insinuating.
Well, what about Section 4? Is that a way to sort of put this off for another day and come up with regulations that have been passed by the assessor's office and thought through carefully to address, Ms. Heller's problems? So the town says...
Wouldn't we need to refer to that, to the issue in sections 1C?
Well, those are one set of exemptions, but Section 4 says that we may by bylaw adopt additional requirements or exemptions and regulations to implement or enforce the fee, consistent with the Act.
Well, it's even more expansive than that. It's bylaw, requirements, exemptions, and regulations. So there is what I see is a giant hole through which we can drive several trucks next to each other to figure out the particulars. And we could say, should this pass, this 2% fee doesn't apply in cases where the sale price is less than the purchase price. I'm not endorsing anything, but I think we can have the conversation at a future date.
And it would require a bylaw so that we would go through presumably a robust discussion and analysis process that addresses, the particular issues you're talking about while addressing the concerns that the assessor's office may have. So I mean, it's a good point to raise. And 2008 may have not hurt Brookline at that point, but past experience is not a sign of future performance.
No, I don't believe if you analyzed the 88 year, you would find the same thing. I don't know. I just remember having conversations with realtors whom I knew who were saying people can't even sell their house for what they bought it for. So I just, I think that there should be some recognition. And it doesn't happen often. I'm not saying it does. But if you're the person in the position, it's pretty terrible,
And it's not just financial setbacks, but also, we always talk about climate change. I mean, that's going to affect some people in Brookline in a significant way in terms of their ability to sell their homes for the prices that they would expect under normal times. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with, what's going on in our climate, and it can be scary. So I think Section 4 addresses your concern, and we can go forward with that.
If I can just add just a point of clarification, because I think some folks have been confused about this, maybe not on the board, but some folks, that it is not properties valued over $500,000. The $500,000 is exempting anything below that amount. So let's say the property is valued at $600,000. This fee, the 2%, would only apply to $100,000. And I think that's a really important point to note, is because as much as anybody, sit up here and every time we have a debate or dialogue, think about the most vulnerable among us. And I just want to make sure that we're talking about the first $500,000 free and clear, right? And then after that, that's when this actual fee takes place. So any numbers that we do, any calculations that we do, my little calculator over here, I'm always exempting the first $500,000 and then looking at the impact of it afterwards. So.
But, yes, but
And
my
that's
point
in
is that
section
people,
1, letter C, if you're looking at the.
people who are purchasing homes for only 600,000 are not in a position where they have a lot of disposable income. I mean, they probably scraped a down payment together, and then they have a mortgage. So they got to pay the mortgage back, and then, the fee that we're going to charge them would come out of what they had paid for down payment. So the next time they go to pay to buy a house, their down payment is less. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, again, I'm just suggesting what you mentioned earlier, a property that was valued at $600,000 that went down to $550,000, the fee on that would be $500.
And I know that you're talking about,
I just think the numbers matter. So like I wouldn't be doing this, but you're mentioning
Well-
numbers, and so I think it's important as you mentioned those numbers for me to talk about the real.
I agree.
Then the median price in Brookline is $1.5 million.
yeah, but I agree with
Right,
you
it's
that,
different.
that
I don't know who's buying these
$500
the houses
may
for
not be too
$500,000.
much to some people, but to some other people, it's a lot. And depending upon their income level.
I get
So-
that.
But at the end of the day, property ownership is a choice
What do you mean by that?
that you can always rent.
Okay, I'm not sure I want to go out and campaign on that slogan.
No, but I mean, I think embedded in this discussion is the assumption that everybody owns, but you have a choice.
Okay. Any rate, so are we okay with approving the act as, I assume, as amended in section 7? Do people disagree with
I
changing
think
shall to may?
I think the shall is the right move, honestly. Not to disagree with the chair, but I think that
You can disagree with me whenever you want.
Well, then let's go. I just think I'm thinking about future boards, not the 5 of us, but future boards, and making sure, what this is attempting to do is to say, although it's important to provide housing, that middle-class housing and workforce housing should be included as part of this, and this doesn't prohibit that, what I'm reading here. It just mentions that, like, the priority should be for those who are the most vulnerable, the people in greatest need should be prioritized, and I think that's just right and proper for this particular legislation.
I think when you say prioritization, it means more than just balancing, different types of projects, so. Anyway, what do other people think? Want to vote on it? Just so we can move on?
I'm actually with the chair. I think, just for the sake of parallel construction, may is more appropriate.
I agree.
I'll note that there are a number of funding sources that are available for affordable housing, 2 of which are the Community Development Block Grant funding and the Housing Trust Fund. So I think we need to take a holistic view about all the funding sources and dispense appropriately. And that's not saying that these funds aren't appropriate for use in the housing authority or for the housing authority, but it's about the sum of the parts and what we're doing across all the funding sources.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Can we finish our discussion?
well, my
Well,
problem.
you are the petitioner. Okay, so tell me what's your view.
Well, first of all, it's my understanding that you all are supposed to be voting on the warrant article that was approved by town meeting.
No,
And
we're
that
voting on
would-
the legislation that we drafted to implement the town meeting warrant article.
Well,
And we have to send something to the legislature.
Right,
It's
and
not
it's-
the warrant article.
but it's my understanding that that legislation is based on the warrant article.
Correct.
And that what you can do is some wordsmithing, but you cannot change fundamental elements of what town meeting approved, correct?
I think that's probably generally correct, yes.
So if town meeting was comfortable with changing, because there was a discussion around the shalls and the wills, then I think that the remaining shall, town meeting understood what it was doing. So I'm not sure that that constitutes wordsmithing as much as substituting select board's opinion for that of town meeting. And it's my understanding that that is beyond the scope of what you all are able to do.
My understanding was that it was a resolution, and
It wasn't a resolution, I mean, it was in the form of a resolution, but it was a vote instructing the select board or authorizing select board to file legislation. I don't think it was non-binding, I think it was binding.
Okay.
But we have flexibility in terms of in terms of things like this, to say that, we want to give the select board some flexibility in terms of balancing the needs of the different types of housing.
I don't think you have that flexibility.
Well, okay.
But that's
we
why
can
we
vote
have
on this.
but that's why we have town council. I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
I respectfully disagree, and before we take that vote, I'd much rather have us be on a surer footing than
Okay,
to make a mistake.
I call for a vote, and, we'll decide whether, go forward one way or the other.
I have some other issues with it, too.
Okay.
So, one of the other issues that I have is in section 1C, it says residential, refers to residential, and I don't think it's supposed to say residential. I think it's supposed to refer to all real estate transactions. There's a section in there about exemptions. There was no exemptions language in the warrant article that town meeting approved. There was considerable discussion about that being something that would be taken up at a later date so that we could more thoroughly vet what the issues are and tailor them to Brookline. And so as Select Board Member Heller was expressing concerns about people being underwater, that was one of them. Another one was senior citizens that leave their home that have to go to assisted living, or first-time home buyers, or, you buy and sell in Brookline. We treat it as one transaction as opposed to two. But those are things that we can talk about off the cuff, but we felt like, and we also thought that that was one of the things, that there would be a committee that actually went through and looked at these things. And that was part of the discussion that we had at town meeting. So my point is that, my ultimate point is, I think we need to maybe spend a few more days looking at this before we vote on it.
So I got your comments back and used that version as the version circulated to the board.
But I'm pretty sure I read or struck out that the whole exemption.
Yes, so the version we're operating doesn't have the language that you just referenced.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, the version that's attached to the agenda does.
Because that went out, I think, on Friday.
It was Friday, so.
So I don't have what you guys have.
It's the version that you sent on Monday.
See, and the lawyer in me is like, you sit side by side. And that's not going to do me any good, because I'm one of those people. Can I have it?
Okay. I believe it is also on our website.
Yeah, I'm just, it's one of those things, there are a lot of people here that have a lot riding on us getting this right, and I apologize if I didn't catch the residential real estate as I was going through making, my edits, but there are a lot of people here, I think we can delay it another week, just to make sure that it's right. That's all I'm asking for. I mean.
Okay, so what do board members think? Mr. Franco, what do you think?
I'm happy to delay a week if that would give the petitioner more comfort.
Okay, so we'll have town council look at it, determine the extent to which we have power to write this legislation on the issue of may shall, and come back later on to vote on this.
Okay.
Okay? Sorry. Okay, next. Transfer of license, alteration of premises, change of location, Again, a public hearing. We're only a half an hour late, so you're lucky.
We've made up 30 minutes.
Request of approving the application to transfer and change location of an all-kinds package store license from Anastasi Brookline, Inc., doing business as Brookline Fine Wines and Spirits, 27 Harvard Street, to Rue des Savours, I'm sorry, if that was close enough.
No, that's.
Okay, LLC, doing business as what I said before. 305 Harvard Street, Candace Rasias, manager.
Rashes.
Rashes, sorry.
That's okay. Scott Rubin here, from Brockton, Massachusetts, attorney on behalf of Candace Rashes and the applicant here, transferee for this proposed transaction. Candace is very excited about this, this new venture. She looked quite a while for appropriate location to locate this, what we would call Vom Fass franchise, which is a German-based franchise in which they manufacture gourmet vinegars and artisan spirits and oils. It also involves whiskeys and bourbons and specialty items that come that are sourced from Europe and the United States as well. So this is proposed to be the first franchise in Massachusetts. This is a former location for, I think, a Kabloom was at this location. We're taking a general off-premises full liquor license and really converting it into a real specialty store. So it's not going to be a traditional package store in any way, shape, or form. We won't have lottery. We would not sell cigarettes. We do not do those types of things. This is a very exclusive franchise product that will be the first of its kind here in Massachusetts. So we're excited about that. We think the location is absolutely perfect. I read through some of the comments from the various town boards, and all of them were favorable to this location. We recently filed our food permit request, and I believe that the Board of Health had no issues with our equipment locations and what we expect to furnish this location with. The space has been sort of white walled, so to speak. The landlord was kind enough to put the business back in sort of a plain vanilla shell for Von Fass to come in and fit it up the way their franchise location should be done, which should take us hopefully no more than a couple of months from when we get approval. And she does recently have her tip certification. Candace has extensive experience in the food business. That's her primary attraction to this particular franchise, but this has an alcohol component to it, so she's very well aware, had met with the police department about her responsibilities related to this. But I will suggest to the board respectfully that this is not, again, a traditional liquor sale, point of sale location where we're going to be doing high volume liquor sales on a Friday and Saturday night for people to take home and consume like that. It's more of a specialty, high-end type store. So with that, we would take any questions, but certainly ask for your favorable approval.
Okay, well, we miss Kaboom Flowers, but this sounds like a good business for this space. Any questions from the board?
I'll just note that we take the service and this, in this case, the sale of alcoholic beverages very seriously. So you can expect us to try and trip you up at some point. I realize that this isn't maybe a traditional package store, but we will send folks in to try and purchase from you, and you'll consider yourself warned, and I hope we don't see you here for a violation hearing.
Certainly we hope not.
So it says fire department approval is pending. Has that been finalized, you know?
I think the department wasn't able to access the property, so, I don't think they would even get a building permit or occupancy permit without it. So you can condition your
Okay.
vote, but I think it's going to be covered in any event.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll condition it.
Yeah, we haven't started the real renovations yet. The equipment's not here yet, so have a contractor lined up for that who is responsible and will take care of all the permitting.
Any other questions from the board?
Briefly, I'm just trying to understand, can I afford to buy anything there? I'm wondering, is this you say it's different, is it just different, is it the environment, or is it literally you're just selling on the alcohol side, just really high premium products? I'm just trying to understand how this is different than a traditional package store, is that? Other than it sells other things like oils and things
Sure.
of that nature.
Excellent question. And the answer is really what pushed me over the top with respect to opening this business in particular. Because I had been looking for about 5 years to open up my own establishment, and this really tipped it over for me. The most important thing about the products that Vom Fass offers, and Vom Fass is German and translated into English means from the cask. So these products are 100% sustainable and traceable. Everything in the store is. So there's also a very high benchmark of quality. So the difference between walking into a Wines and More and walking into a Vom Fass is you have the ability to sample everything before you purchase it and get an idea of the kind of products that you like, whether it's an alcoholic beverage or an oil and a vinegar, and compare them with other things. Second, the staff is so well trained on all the different types of products, where they're from, how they're sourced, how they're bottled, down to the distillation process. So it's really a learning experience on top of just wanting to go in and buy a bottle of wine. So the experience of being in a Vom Fass store is something like being in maybe a Williams-Sonoma, when you go up to the counter and they have the sampling at the counter. And there are people behind the counter that can give you information that you may not have even thought of about how to use the product, how to combine them and get different flavor profiles. Interesting information about how they're sustainably sourced and where that section of the world provided the product, and an additional story behind that about the farmer, about the distillery. So it's very, very intimate. So it brings a community in and not only establishes a precedent for what's important, right? Traceability, sustainability. Everything is recyclable, but it also helps to educate people about what they're eating and what they're drinking.
So one of your some of your competition is a olive oil store on Beacon Street, the Olive Connection, which seems to be somewhat similar to your concept, although they don't sell liquor. Have you looked at the market for this type of product in Brookline, and is there a robust market of people who want high-end liquor besides me?
I guess we're
Always
the Brookline
people-
Bank loan committee now.
Certainly. I think this community is perfectly suited for anything gourmet and high-end, for sure. Following a discussion of the land bank transfer tax and things like that, I think that's a perfect segue to the community that would support this experience, for sure.
Okay.
I'll just note, I'm the chair of our small business development committee, so when I have the opportunity to engage with business owners such as yourselves, I'm very interested to understand the market, what brings you to places like Brookline, things like that. So I appreciate your sharing with me the business a little bit. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions from the board?
I just want to echo a point I made earlier, that we've got some Brookline-specific regulations on the sale of retail alcohol or retail package stores. And you mentioned potential tasting, so C6 of those regulations deals with the appropriate size of those samples. So we get down to the minutia here in Brookline, so make sure you're aware of it.
All right.
Okay, Pat.
Good to know.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is a public hearing. Anyone from the audience have questions or comments or observations to make? No? Any other questions, comments from the board?
I just
Yes,
have
Ms.
one
Hamilton.
comment, which I think it's brilliant that you're right next to the Boston General Store, because as you were describing the market, that's exactly who I see go into that store.
Thank you. I agree with you. I thought the same thing when I walked in there.
I'll have to go to that store too.
They have great gifts.
And a
And it
record,
smells
record store on the
amazing.
other side. Yeah. It's a good little lineup.
Okay, I move approval of the application to transfer and the change of location of an all-kinds package store license from Anastasi Brookline Inc., doing business as Brookline Fine Wines and Spirits, 27 Harvard Street, to Rue des Sauveurs, LLC, doing business as Rue des Sauveurs, 305 Harvard Street, Candace Crassus, sorry, manager, subject to final approval by the fire department. All in favor, Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you.
Good luck.
Okay, Brookline, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, can I just, I'm Anastasio Shinobulis from Anastasio Brookline Inc., and I just want to thank you for the last 12 years. If everything goes well with this transfer, it's been a pleasure working with you. I've come before you twice, once when I opened up Anastasio Brookline on 27 Harvard Street, and a few years later when I got a full liquor license. We've gone 12 years without a violation with all the spot inspections and everything that has happened, and we're proud of that. And I'm very excited for this new business, and I just wanted to thank you for the last 12 years. Usually people ask you of things. I'm simply just thanking you for the last 12 years, and I appreciate all you do. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all those years without any incident. So next, Brookline Housing Authority Preservation Initiative request. Mr. Blood, tell us what you're up to. This is a continuation.
Everything?
Yeah. This is a continuation of last week's, or related to last week's vote with respect to the RAD project.
Yes. Well, first of all, just looking at the clock, I'm guessing that you all are very happy that the last agenda item, which we'll try not to take too long, you might be out of here by 9 o'clock as compared to
That
some of
would
your-
be fabulous.
What, midnight and AM marathons for a while there?
Whenever we can get out on the same day we started.
Yes,
Could be.
You're going to beat that by 3 hours tonight, maybe. Well, thank you for having us back. The Housing Authority in the town have really been building a very productive and gratifying relationship. And our little session tonight is just a continuation of an ongoing affair. I was very happy going back several years when Patrick Dober, the executive director, and Mike Jacobs, the Housing Authority's rep to the HAB and board member of the BHA, and David Treach, the former chair, actually invited me to a couple of their strategic planning sessions very early in what's now ripening into some very real improvements. And it was clear that the Public Housing Authority model going back to the 30s had no future, and they could see it, and I'm sure other authorities around the country, and they were really putting in a lot of thought and intellectual investment to solving that problem in a very fundamental way. And I think that Brookline is going to see the fruits of that, and we already are, beginning with the Dummer Street project. The entire platform that they're operating under now is revolutionary in its strengthening, and they've done a great job in the staffing that they've attracted, and even on their board, Sue Cohen, a resident of Brookline, who had engineered the Cambridge Housing Authority's transition of this same major sort of event, has now joined Patrick's board as well. So we think we've got a great partner. They're in the course of a series of upgradings of their about a half a dozen of their properties. It began with the Arthur O'Shea House on Park Street. In that case, well, you recall we came for a revolving loan fund for $400,000 in and out to do all of the projects. And that was well used to the point where on that first project, they didn't need to come for any money from the trust fund for the overall long-term viability. But they warned us that that wasn't always going to be the case, and so this is the first time on their second project where we're here to support and ask for your vote to support and at this point, it's a preliminary commitment. The Housing Authority has lots of other sources, and they need to see evidence from Brookline that we're committed as well. And so the amount that we're asking for you to vote in support is $1.35 million in home and housing trust funds to permit the upgrading development at 90 Longwood, which is also the headquarters of the Housing Authority. So there's some office work involved as well. This is part of, there's about 100 units that will be improved there, and about 500 overall in the overall program. Most of this is preservation and upgrading, but down the line, there are a couple of properties that you're going to hear more about from them and from us, almost certainly, that will involve some new affordable unit creation as well that the town may be able to help with. The second subject, again, it's not new, but also relating to the partnership has to do with the waiver of building permit fees. Another way we can support them. You've approved individual projects in the past for a permit fee waiver, and in this case, we're asking that you approve the fee waiver for this project, and then as a matter of policy going forward, so we don't come back each time. And the Housing Advisory Board fully supports this without any disagreement, that the uniqueness of the BHA in what they provide and who they are and their relationship, even compared with other wonderful affordable housing providers, is deserving of this particular additional benefit from the town. And so we're asking that your second vote include the waiver for both this project and the remaining projects in this program. And that's probably a bit too long, but I'd like to introduce Patrick and his team to give you more specifics of what they have in mind.
Hi, good evening, and thanks to Roger and the HAB for your support, and Virginia, the HAB staff member, for kind and generous support. And good evening, folks, and thank you for considering these two measures of ongoing support to bring new life to our properties for future years. And since we've been with you before a few times in the last year, and with the 9 o'clock goal, and maybe even beating that by a couple minutes, we'll keep it brief and hopefully not too repetitive. I did want to mention, as Roger noted, Mike Jacobs, our chairman, is here, and Roger talked about new talented staff, and Maria Maffei is here, who's been our redevelopment director for 2 years now and has made a lot of great work happen. So it really takes a big team, and we're building a good one, I think. A couple thoughts. We understand it might not feel like, in some ways, a high-impact investment to put town resources toward properties that already exist. There's, goodness knows, there's been a lot of talk recently, and naturally, there's a strong interest to add new units to the supply of housing. We get that, and it's at the same time, as Roger pointed out, it is absolutely true and an unfortunate fact that if we don't take care of these properties in the near future, they will become obsolete. And the town supply, any town supply of affordable housing can change by adding new units or by losing units, whether through increased rents or through obsolescence, and the result is the net supply. So in a very significant way, your support helps going forward to maintain and even, in a sense, increase for the next generation and keep the supply of affordable housing at the best net number that we can. Continuing also on a point Roger made is that we really have made good progress based on what we laid out and started 2 years ago. We are on time and on budget, or within enough weeks of on time for me to claim that we are on time on our construction of our First project at 61 Park Street. It's a seniors and disabled property, and we just had our own board meeting tonight, and we talked about, Maria talked about how the first residents have moved back into their brand-new apartments. They'll have air conditioning, they have 3 times more storage. Folks love these units. They have all kinds of aging in place features. So, yeah, we haven't added units at 61 Park Street, but they're really much more healthy, wonderful apartments for our lower income folks. And so now we come with a second project. As Roger mentioned, it was probably on the unusual side that the one under construction now didn't require any kind of extra subsidy, just the bonds and the tax credits that we got from the state. The next one around 90 Longwood, for a few reasons, it's a different, slightly different property. The building envelope needs more work, and so it's more expensive. And it's an initial, letter of intent, as we say, that is proposed tonight to provide some financing. And then with the building permits, the town has indicated, through its actions project by project, the last couple, what looks like a comfort waiving those fees for the housing authority makes a big difference. And so the plan is to, keep things simple and make that a routine policy for redevelopment projects going forward. And, other than that, really more check to see in 8 minutes till 9 if you have any questions or comments or concerns about the work that we're doing for me or Mike or Maria or Roger.
Mr. Collector, do you want to?
I had a question. I think I know the answer, but in the agenda, it refers to Home and Housing Trust Fund. I assume these are 2 separate funding sources. Home is the HOME federal funding, and the Housing Trust Fund, and I think it's reflected in the letter.
And they're both, pots of funds that the HAB makes recommendations on. The home funds are a block grant. They flow from the federal government, and it's a smaller source. The Affordable Housing Trust is the larger organic town source of funds, and there's some of each in this project,
Thank you. And then the other question I had, Patrick, is I have certainly no concerns about waiving building permits for our partner, which, we consider the Housing Authority a partner to provide public services. My only question is there are times when projects, perhaps not housing projects, but other projects, have a third-party funding source partner that might be willing to reimburse building permit fees, and I'd hate for the town to lose a building permit fee if it was paid by a third party, not by the, not if it had impact on the project itself or the Housing Authority's resources.
Yeah. No, as the custodian of the town's budget, it's a very reasonable question, Mel. And, I don't envision a scenario based on the work we've done to date and the work that we plan, as far as the eye can see, to have any sort of partner or private partner. I think the notion of waiving a building permit fee should be premised on the Housing Authority's intention for all the apartments to be affordable, right? If you're building, higher end market rate units, then you can generate some profitability maybe, and then maybe you shouldn't be coming and asking for a waiver of a fee. We don't anticipate that, especially with our redevelopment projects. The language that you have before you, I don't think explicitly mentions that one way or another.
But the issue, though, is not whether we waive the fee, but whether we waive it into the future. It's in effect an expenditure by the building department.
Indeed.
And we are committing them to spend this money over multiple fiscal years. And just as a practical matter of prudence, that doesn't sit well with me. And the other thing is, there may be sources of grant money, for example, or other sources other than a partner that could be used in the future to pay building fees, or we could find, funds within, town budget that are from different sources that could be used for this purpose. So the idea of locking ourselves into a particular way of funding the waiver or the fees at this point, just doesn't sit right, well with me. I think it's not a prudent approach to take. So-
Yeah, as a technical point, and Mel can correct me on this, but, and doesn't address all of your concerns, Mr. Chairman, but if I'm not mistaken, when the town prepares its budget, it doesn't include a particular projection for building department fees that are collected annually, so I'm not sure, but I could be wrong about
We
that.
certainly do, yeah.
It
Building
does,
permit fees are a major source of revenue for the town.
It's an
yeah.
estimate, but
Yeah, okay.
But again, I don't want to mislead you. I don't think we should be securing building permit fees from the Public Housing Authority, or if any of that funding would take away from affordability or anything like that. I don't know. I know that, for example, with MSBA projects, it's different for us because there's a third party on our school projects. And I just don't want to eliminate that possibility of the town securing building permit fees if it wasn't coming from you. I don't know if that's even a concern. Was Dummer Street, did we get a building permit on Dummer?
Yeah, it was waived on Dummer.
It was waived,
With the rationale that sponsored by the Housing Authority, no private partner, 100% affordable, which is, our fact pattern, but.
I just want to say that the HAB had a long discussion about this and decided very thoughtfully that we would only recommend the extension of this waiver to the Housing Authority. A lot of our other nonprofit partners are able to take advantage of grants. That's not something that the Housing Authority will be able to take advantage of. No grantor in their right mind is going to fund a public agency. It just won't happen, which is a lot of the reason why we felt like this would be an important. We did talk about it very strongly, and we have been asked by other affordable housing developers to do that, and we have always said no.
And, another way to look at it is that with the exception of 61 Park, we did our easiest property first. We don't anticipate another project coming forward that won't, for better or for worse, request some support from the town through the Affordable Housing Trust. And so, we can come in and out of one pocket or the other, I suppose. You can look at it that way. But
we're not saying that we don't think that we should waive the fees, but on a project-by-project basis, as opposed to, committing ourselves off into the future that we don't know, what the future will look like.
and we don't really know either whether, the Housing Authority might in the future be able to get some grants or whatever. So, I think that's the important thing, is it's an unknown, and we should probably continue to do it on a case-by-case basis.
And I don't think that this is a real burden, other than just having to come and talk to us. And we're nice guys and we're nice people, so.
May I make a suggestion that we limit it to the preservation initiative rather than to all projects, if that would make you feel more comfortable?
Well, why not limit it to 90 Longwood? That's, I think, what we're saying.
Well, the preservation initiative, we have a set sort of prototype in terms of how we're doing this, which there are no sort of partners involved. It's sort of a set model.
I might suggest that, we just in the vote articulate those components for these. I think preservation projects is good, but I think maybe another step, just say which shall include X, Y, and Z.
And I think the X, Y, and Z, if I might, 100% affordable units, sponsored by the Housing Authority,
Where
there's no other
Where there are
funding
no
partner.
third party.
And we can list that. We can list the specific development.
I think we can work that out.
But wait, but that still, are you saying that we would waive fees for all preservation projects going forward, or to 90?
When we talk about, just as a definition of a term, when we talk about our preservation initiative, we have 10 sites. We'd like to preserve them all. What we're particularly talking about right now is the federal RAD program, which is a remarkable opportunity, which we're seizing. Those are 6 properties. We have a list of them. it is so inconceivable to even contemplate the possibility that there would be, what we call excess proceeds available. On every one of these projects, we will be begging and scrimping and saving and going to every, state subsidy source that we can find. So I don't, we don't want to, I think, dispute too much. It's up to you, whatever you're comfortable with. We're very grateful for your support, but those would be our thoughts.
Just to limit this in terms of what I hear what you're seeking, Bernard. The total program is 6 projects. This request is for the second, so there are 4 more specific projects that are going to fall in this category. And if it provides additional comfort, it would be easy just to list those, and then that would be the end of it until we would come back. So there would be a specific number and an end point, and we just identify there's 4 of them.
I think that makes sense. It's this particular suite of programs, and we can come back and find out more about additional preservation programs that may fall under a different project scheme or may have additional funding partners.
Or I guess I would like to just make sure that, our waiver is contingent on you coming to us with those additional preservation projects. And so we can see that, the waiver is a part of the financing package there. I don't mean to be picky, but it's just a question of, what is the prudent approach to take? If we weren't dealing with the housing authority, but we're dealing with ABC contractors or something,
I would just say, before our very highly competent staff member came up and mentioned that, the chances it's just the chances seem to be close to zero of this group being able to get grant funding to cover these.
Yeah, but that's a separate issue, though.
These fees.
It's a separate issue.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's fine either way. If we make them come back every time, I guess that's fine. I just think crafting, the way to fix the policy would be like, unless pigs fly, this is the policy, and it just seems like, well, if there's no chance of that happening, I don't understand the point of making them come back every time to tell us that there's no chance of that happening.
All we're saying is come back with each.
Just do
each project,
what
and you will get the waiver by virtue of the fact that you brought another component of this big project to us.
Right. What they've been doing.
Yeah, what they've been doing. Right.
Yeah.
So in other words, we're guaranteeing your waiver so long as you come up with a project.
If you're uncomfortable, we're going to probably be coming back to you for more money than the building permit. So if you're uncomfortable with this,
I'm
then fine,
uncomfortable,
do
and
it on a project-by-project
the public
basis.
would be uncomfortable if we didn't, address this issue.
I say I'm not uncomfortable, but I do think that it would be great to have a full unanimous board support this, and if we don't, then it's probably.
Well, if you're going to come
best
back
to go
anyway,
back
then,
to the way we've been doing things.
Okay. So how would we phrase that? Do you have any thoughts? Let's see.
So we just wouldn't.
Well, we vote on the first part of that, because I think there's no-
We just wouldn't vote on number 2, right?
We'd like a waiver of the building permit for.
Well, that's what we'll say.
Right, no, just to be clear, we're heading toward a construction start this summer for the next project, 90 Longwood. We've gone through the sources and uses of funds with the HAB. There is no excess of funds, it's 100% affordable. So what we would appreciate at a minimum tonight would be a waiver of the building permit for this upcoming project where we plan to.
Why don't we make that the substance of the vote then? Vote number 2 is the town will waive the building department fees permit fees for the project at 90 Longwood.
I just want to stress with the board how important this project is to the town and what a great opportunity it is to bring in significant millions of dollars of federal resources into town to make these units like
we're not doubting that.
be able to be preserved like.
Yeah, that's not.
Okay. So.
Can I say one thing before
Yeah.
we do the vote, because I think we're probably going home? I just, and I've talked to, I think, all of you about this at some point or another, but I do continue to be concerned about the sort of what I see as a lack of racial diversity in our various affordable housing, including that at the BHA, that created through inclusionary zoning, in Section 8 housing, and so I've seen all the data ably prepared by half the people in the room right now, and I just would like, maybe for the HAB in particular, to take this up as an issue as we potentially in the future might pass this real estate transfer fee, which would bring significant funding in as we continue to make the kinds of investments the board is ready to make today. I'd like to see this also increase the racial diversity in particular within all the different types of housing that we talked about. So I'd like to see maybe the HAB in particular, of course, BHA, take these up as like really important issues and try to go forth with a plan where we maybe look at what the preferences that we have currently, how we might be able to work with that within the bounds of the law, and anything else that we can do to actually increase the diversity there, because the numbers are really, really stark. And I think a lot of people would be surprised to see, just how white, frankly, these, the folks in these particular units like actually are.
Right.
And let me just add, it's also a marketing problem.
Well, there's an important point of information, really. I can't speak for all the housing in Brookline. I do understand that perhaps inclusionary zoning, Section 8 vouchers, may be not heavily weighted toward ethnic and racial minorities. The public housing properties that we're talking about are more than half racial and ethnic minorities. We are proud of that. That is a tremendous contribution that we make to the town of Brookline.
Yeah, absolutely, and I do know that part. So, Roger.
Okay. So, I move approval of, approval of the request for continued support for the BHA Preservation Initiative, including a preliminary commitment of $1.35 million from the Home and Housing Trust Funds for the redevelopment of 90 Longwood Avenue. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Ms. Fernandez?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. And secondly, I move approval of the waiver of building permit fees for 90 Longwood Avenue, BHA redevelopment project. All in favor, say, is that the correct way of stating it, for people think? Yeah, okay. All in favor, say aye. Mr. Franco?
Aye.
Ms. Heller?
Aye.
Ms. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Fernandez?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks very much, folks. Greatly appreciate it.
9:10.
Bernard, I forgot to do this, but I just wanted to point out what a great job that Mel and Raul did today at the hearings at the State House for the transfer fee. They did an outstanding job.
Great.
So I just wanted to say thank you.
Same to you.
You're welcome.